Okay, everybody, good evening. We'll get started. So welcome to tonight's Safety and Operations Committee meeting. I've already taken attendance. I've added Mr. Stroman, Mr. Saylor, and Mr. Hinkle as well. So Chief Miller, you're up first.
Thank you, Mr. Weaver. Just a few things to go over this month with regards to upcoming events and some training. First is our planning for commencement. So this year with Dr. Fuller, this being his first year with commencement, we went over a few things from years past. Not a whole lot of changes going on. Maybe some minor issues with traffic and stationing of personnel, but I think all in all, it'll run very smoothly. Our AEDs that we received through the grant, may remember we received 8 new AEDs. They're both pediatric and adult certified AEDs. Part of that grant was to train our staff in emergency cardiac response, which we have done. So we're in the process now. Those AEDs have been installed, and we're working with all of our school teams to practice just an emergency response for a cardiac event. So we've been through 2 of our elementary schools already, had a lot of positive feedback, but went over all the processes for that, and everything seems to be working very well. As they're all placed, we'll make sure that those pediatric units, again, are placed in our elementary buildings so that the smaller kids in the school district can take advantage of that if, unfortunately, we were to have some kind of an event with a pediatric patient. So all of our AEDs are equipped for pediatrics. It's just these newer ones sense that on their own. The other units that we have throughout the district have 2 sets of pads, so it would be up to the user to make sure they would be correct. But that project is all but complete. So thanks again to Ms. Dreisbach for also helping out with that, and the Wellness Committee. Just a note about some team training. Tomorrow I'll be attending a training session at the MCIU on lessons learned from the Oxford, Michigan shooting incident. That'll be presented by Brandon Rohn, who's a specialist in school safety, along with some firsthand knowledge from some people that were at the event. So hope to get some good feedback from them about what's going on. May 28th, Mr. Weaver and I will be attending a training session put on by PSBA. That'll be for our compliance with our safety report that we're scheduled to give you all on the school board on June the 2nd. So we just want to make sure that we're covering the required details for this year's particular scheduled report. And then on August 21st, I've reserved the Pennsylvania Safety and Security Institute out in Harrisburg for a training day. So I'll be taking members of the safety and security team as well as administrators. So they have a real-time lab there that is set up like a school building where we can simulate everything from an interactive, agitated guest in the building all the way up and including an active shooter event. So we'll spend the whole day there. It is at no cost to the district. There's grant funding available through the IU if we need to bus our folks out there. But so that whole day leading up to our next 25-26 school year will be spent with our administrative team, some of our counselors, and our safety and security staff. Just an update from the Pennsylvania School Resource Officers Association. We will have several of our members attending their conference, and I'm pleased to announce that Officer Leo Vogel from Evergreen Elementary was just yesterday named as the Pasro, Pennsylvania School Resource Officer of the Year. So he will receive that recognition at the conference, which will be held the 23rd through the 25th of June out in Harrisburg. So I've invited several of our administrators to come along to recognize him at that time. The last thing with regards to our team and some of those updates is we had our quarterly review with Dr. Russell, and what we like to do is just to go over trending items, any of the feedback she may get from the board or the community that we may not hear directly. We talked about that this week. We focus especially on law, policy, administrative regulations, and handbook, and how each one of those falls into play depending on the circumstances. Just as an overview and a recollection for our team about how we function with those things. So that went very well. Again, we do that quarterly. We pick a topic, focus on it. We spent about an hour and 45 minutes together just last week. So again, very well received. And then I just wanted to go over some touch points here for the upcoming safety report that we'll be having, again, as I mentioned, on June the 2nd. As of year-to-date, just some numbers here for the incidents that have been coming through our team. So the Safe to Say report, if you're familiar with that, an anonymous reporting system through the Commonwealth. We had 132 incidents this year to date. So that's from July 1 of 24 until today. 11 of those were considered life safety issues. They've all been resolved. We've had no significant follow-up required on any of those, but we have been receiving good information. So, and of those life safety tips, they get presented to us from the caller, from the reporting person in that fashion. But if the call takers in Harrisburg feel that it is not legitimate concern, they might downgrade it. So of those 132, you may have heard a report throughout the year that those numbers for life safety were higher. But as we went through and categorized those that were genuine life safety issues, we whittled those down to 11. So, and the rest of those could be reports of vaping or harassment or unsafe practices on a bus, things of that nature. So most of those are flushed out by the administrative team, and periodically will require the use of school police or school safety personnel. Threat assessments year to date, 31 of all 31 of those, there was only one that was a substantiated report that was handled internally and then handed off externally to one of our care providers, one of the mental health situations, one of the mental health providers that we use. Bus patrol, we've only had that since last month, but we've already fielded 163 year-to-date violations. On top of that, we had 76 others that were questionable, so we denied those. If they're obviously not a violation, or if the driver doesn't give ample notice to the oncoming traffic, we're not going to be issuing citations for that. So that's where that report stands year-to-date. As far as citations go within the school police department this year, fortunate, we've only had 12 of those. And then we had 2 charges referred to the courts under the misdemeanor charges through youth aid. 1 went to youth aid and 1 went directly to juvenile. And now the youth aid panel referrals you see at the bottom, they are separate from the citation line. They are internal referrals. So our youth aid panel that we have here at the high school handled 16 referrals of those 14 hearings and participants, and it involved 13 of our students. And you'll see the note there that 1 offended on a second occasion. So they're just some preliminary numbers, just to put that out there for you, kind of the activity level when it comes to the reported issues that come into our unit, as well as the administrative team here in all of our buildings. So I'll take any questions about those if you have them.
So, thank you, Chief Miller. So for the Safe to Say and the threat assessments, I know those are year-to-date numbers. Is there knowledge comparatively to last year's numbers?
So Safe to Say last year was at 93. And threat assessment last year were right about that same mark, right around the 28 to 34, 35 mark. So why I say preliminary is because I sent that all the data back to all our principals and lead counselors in the buildings just to verify that that's consistent.
Okay.
And then I'll give you the actual numbers on the June 2nd date.
Okay, that would be helpful. And then also to understand,
And I can give you a comparison then too for like the past 2 or 3 years if you'd like.
that would be also helpful. I think that what I would be curious to see is what the reports consisted of. I know they're broken down.
Yeah, I have a breakdown of that. I didn't want to put that out here again because that wasn't all
No,
vetted out
I mean,
yet,
for
but yeah.
June 2nd would be perfect.
Yeah, we'll absolutely give you those. And then typically what Mr. Weaver and I put together is a report of what those issues are, and then a separate report where you can see the categories that are offered to the callers. Some of them will be marked as a 0 because
They have to choose a thing, right?
yeah, when you file that, it gives you a prompt for what you're trying to report, which is how I mentioned some of those life safety issues numbers were higher because the caller picked it
Sure.
for a higher category, and then the call
once you
taker vets
realized
it
it
and
was
says, you know what,
11.
this
Okay.
is different, right?
Understood. And then, is that broken down by age category as well, where the call originated from, or?
We can't get data about the caller, the person reporting. Now, we have reporting data on who they're focusing the report
That's
on.
I guess that's my question.
Yeah, and then they're broken down by grade level.
Okay,
So elementary and then secondary.
Okay, it's been a bit since we really did a deeper dive into the Safe to Say stuff, so maybe we could
Yeah,
try
I
to
mean, we
highlight some
can,
of that.
we can formulate all kinds of comparisons with they updated this last year, their reportability, so the way we can configure the reports will be a little different than what you're used to seeing, but we can put it all on a sheet and you can compare building to building or
That's great.
grade level to grade level.
And I think it's helpful, looking at this data previous years, I think it was a different perspective. Now that you have a team in place, I think your eyes are a little different on it. So I
Right.
think it's really helpful
Right.
to
And
have
some
your
of those,
feedback.
some of those double over, so the threat assessment may have been generated from a safe to
Totally
say
understand,
report
yeah.
and vice versa.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure that what we're looking at, the numbers, that makes sense, because it's not 163
Right.
total incidents in some instances.
Right.
Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Yeah.
So the bus patrol numbers, that's pretty substantial in 1 month.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if month over month that will taper off if now folks know that that exists, or if it'll continue to increase. And then
I would hope that they would start to drop, but I've talked to other districts and they don't see
and
a
they
real
don't
change.
see a real change. Okay.
you know.
And then how are we tracking in terms of, I guess it's a citation that they're issued? Is it an automatic sort of thing,
Right.
like an easy
So
pass?
the program prompts you with a citation, and then individually an officer has to go through and look at each one, review the video, and verify whether it's a legitimate
That's why the 76
violation.
were denied.
So that's why the 76 were denied. So our officers looked at that and said, that's not a violation. I mean, the very first one I looked at, the amber lights on the bus were on for less than a second.
People can't react.
And then,
that
yeah,
fast,
and the
right?
driver just can't react. And I don't think it's fair for that driver to be given a violation for something where they had no time to react.
So is there, so when you say officer, you mean our officers?
Our officers, right.
And are there designated people, or is whoever picks up?
So there's 5 of us on the team that took the training just to follow up with it. And it was basically a review of how the program works.
Okay.
And then the bus patrol generates all that on the back end.
So it's subjective to but in your professional opinion?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And
Mr. Elmer, that
then,
would be supplemented then by the local police departments?
yeah, so Collegeville and Lower Frederick will be on by the time school year starts this next term.
Okay. It'd be interesting to track that, obviously, to see what 1 month is, what are we comparing it to,
Yeah, and there are several places that are high numbers right now for either violations or potential violations, and that's a conversation that probably Mr. Fabrizio and I'll have with the bus company about where the stop is placed, because it's on it's kind of like a blind curve, and the drivers are coming around and they don't even see the bus, let alone the
Right.
lights.
So then maybe that's not a great spot
Yeah,
for a stop or
exactly.
something like that.
And
Unless
that's- and
it's
that's data
in
we
front
can-
of, I know some of them are in front of houses on the more rural streets,
Yeah.
so that's sort of,
Or, they do it right at a corner,
sure.
and, a car comes around a corner and it's not, so, but we'll work through that.
With regard to the citations, is there a category that you can talk about as to how those citations fell? Like
Well, they're all issued under the civil violation under the vehicle code. So,
No, I'm so sorry. I moved on to the next bullet point. The citations and misdemeanor.
I'm sorry. So the citation and misdemeanors, that has nothing to do with bus patrol.
Understood. I'm so sorry. I didn't tell you.
No,
that.
that's fine.
Yeah. Are those categorized as in terms of severity? I know that,
So the citations, if you see a citation, that's a summary offense. So it's a ticket for a non-traffic issue. There were vaping issues that received citations, and there were 2 underage drinking.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
It was nothing. I mean, we didn't even have an assault violation in any of those.
Okay, I guess that's what I'm getting at, is what the severity of those.
Yeah, and that'll be broken out
Incidents.
in that other report.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And then youth aid, I know we're going to talk a little bit about, it's part of the education of the whole presentation as well.
About the what again? I'm
The
sorry.
youth aid panel?
Yes, yeah, that'll be a part of that educational piece and Dr. Fuller's team. That's who's currently running the youth aid panel here. It's through the high school.
Okay,
And then we hope to either utilize some additional people from the middle schools to join that team or create one just for the middle schools.
okay.
So, but it seems to be pretty successful.
Great, I really appreciate it. Thank
Sure.
you. Do you have any other questions?
Yeah. Going back to talking about commencement and traffic management, I remember last year was the first time I'd attended commencement in a couple of years, and I was really struck by the volume of traffic and the resulting congestion. Don't remember that from my previous time on the board or from my previous experiences with my kids going through graduation. And I mean,
Right.
that might just have been caught up in the excitement of the whole thing with my kids.
Sure.
But I'm just wondering, is that a typical traffic situation what we had last year, or was it unusually bad? And how can we manage to make it better?
So we're changing the format, the parking format a little bit, but bringing people into campus will remain the same as it's been in the last few years. And it's increased, the volume of traffic has increased over the last couple of years. So historically, it's kind of hit or miss. I mean, when we went through COVID and then we came back, there was a surge of people obviously wanting to see that. So that could still be, a lingering piece of this where more people are coming. I think every student gets 8 tickets, 6 tickets, something like that. But it's a fairly good number per student. So when you do the math, we're really pushing a lot of people in.
Yeah.
So, but we're just trying to streamline it through, some little minor changes here and there. The control gates that we put in will be helpful for us in helping to flow traffic in a certain direction.
Okay. How is information about that disseminated to the families?
So that's handled by the administrative team here at the high school. So each graduate's family gets a direct email about traffic patterns and, where to pick up your cap and gown and all those kind of logistical things. And we had one meeting, as I mentioned already, with Dr. Full and his administrative team. Mr. Fabrizio's team and I are going to meet about the actual, what happens on the night of commencement for us and what that looks like. So, always little things here to work out, but all in all, I think it's going to be pretty successful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Chief. All right, Mr. Hinkle, come on up, grab a seat, and use the microphone. So Mr. Hinkle is our head baseball coach, and he had the opportunity to talk to Dr. Russell in regards to some potential options associated with the lower turf field stands. Just as a point of reference, those stands in that area, it has not been identified in any of our capital projects presentation, most recently in November of 2024. But whatever we do, we'll have to consult with Mr. Fabrizio moving forward for some sort of an option and an adjustment to address the issue. Mr. Hinkle, I've taken your presentation and I've just moved it forward. So
Perfect.
the
Okay.
floor is yours.
The whole goal of tonight is really just to start the conversation of what I feel is a project that is long overdue. With my 13th year here at PV as the head coach, I've seen this as an issue and a concern. Anybody who's ever attended a baseball game, there's definitely some issues for us to look at here. So I just included some pictures of the current state of the field, which we are very fortunate and blessed to have turf and to have a board that put turf on there. So we're very thankful for that. So we included just some what are around our area and things that I've seen online of what I know is beyond probably our means grandstands, but things that, I know will work for what the purpose we're looking at, just on a much smaller scale. So this is up at DeSales University, where they have grandstands and they have a press box in there as well, which just kind of including some ideal scenarios. This is over more local at Springford High School. Who's ever been to Springford here, that what they have is they have their grandstands up there with a press box in the middle as well. But what they have is an open gap there, wouldn't really fit kind of the design, one of the ideas of a design purpose of tonight here, but usually the final 4 games are either held at Springford here, or the next slide here is at Boyertown High School, which they have a little bit more blockage in the back there with the size of their press box there as well. Now Boyertown, when they constructed theirs, did work heavily with their Boyertown Legion program, which I've been in discussion with our Legion program here. I know Mr. Stroman is here tonight on behalf of the Legion program as well, that we are kind of committed together towards helping raise towards funds for this endeavor here too. You can go to the next one, Mr. Weaver. This is just a random stock one online that, oh my goodness, if we were having all the money in the world, this would be a phenomenal idea. But I know looking at kind of the slope of the roof there that they have, it's great for one of the purposes that we're looking at here as well. You can go to the next one. And this is kind of more so a stock photo I found online that is probably a more reasonable approach for us to take. Is, I think, within the means here that with the layout of our current structure down there, and ideally what we're hoping for, this is probably kind of the more manageable route for us to go, even though this is on a softball field. I think this is really ideal for us here too. So this is the current state of where we're at as well. I took some pictures right before our Final Four game that if you were a fan viewing a game from the backstop, that's essentially your view of the game, is that if I'm sitting on the first base side there, I'm going to see the entirety of left field, and then when I go to my right, I'm basically missing half of the game. And the chain link fence that we have up right now is a dark black chain link fence, which makes it a little bit harder to view as well. And another picture below of what I think might be a good solution too, that also includes a little bit of a barrier there in the back where you see that it says Warrior Baseball to hopefully block out some sun as well. What we did to try to address the concerns of spectators is we were curious if we brought lower bleachers that you see in the upper right-hand corner there, which are typically bleachers that are brought onto the turf during field hockey season. We put them behind there to see would fans actually sit in bleachers if they were there. And on our Final Four game, it was very well attended, even though it was a rainy night. And people sat in them, but still, from people I've talked to, viewership was kind of an issue from being able to have a clear line of sight. So I was at the 8th grade East-West game the other night, and right around, I want to say this picture I took around 7:30 or 7:45. And this is going to be the first bullet point I really have on the next slide, is the biggest reason why I'm coming here tonight is for player safety. Player safety is the major reason. Can you go back to that last one just for a quick second, Ms. Weaver? Sorry. Is, as you see there, that is the third baseman, the shortstop, and the center fielder, that right as the pitch is getting ready to be delivered, all of them have their hands up trying to block the sun. And the sun right now on that field sets directly behind home plate. So if you play a game there and that sun is setting directly behind home plate, there are many games that I've attended where players are like this before a pitch is hit. If you're at third base and that ball comes off the bat very hard and you're in an unathletic position like that, when that, it's just a player safety issue there. There was a pitcher in this game as well that the sun was so bad that he was actually permitted and allowed by the umpire to wear sunglasses, which is technically a violation according to the rules. So he was pitching around 7:40 with sunglasses on, and he had to receive the ball off on the side of the mound in the shade, because when the ball came back to him, he could not see the ball coming back to him at around that time slot. Yeah.
That was going to be my first question,
Yeah.
is why aren't they wearing sunglasses? But you're telling me that sunglasses are a rule violation?
If you are a pitcher, you are not allowed to wear sunglasses.
Why not?
It is deceiving to the batter. With the light that is coming off, it is directly in the PIAA rules. A pitcher is not allowed to have sunglasses on while he's pitching. Yeah.
The other players are?
Other players are, but even with sunglasses, like in this picture here, you see the shortstop still has sunglasses on,
Yeah.
but still has to put his hand up in order to block the extreme glare of the sun and how it sets directly behind home plate. It is a tough sight. I've been out on that field at that time. It is a true problem, in my opinion, for players. And what I'm concerned about, you can go to the next one now, Mr. Weaver. That's my first point up there, is really just safety, safety, safety. In my 13 years here, I have been on pins and needles sometimes, just hoping and praying that there's not a hard line drive that's hit right to our third baseman or our shortstop, and they have minimal time to react. We actually had this happen to a player 3 years ago at Springford, which their field is oriented in a proper direction. That's part of the issue with our field too, is that the way it's designed, the sun should never be setting directly behind home plate and shining directly into your fielder's eyes. But he was hit directly in the face with a line drive at Springford and was only able to turn his head in time because of that, and had a massive gash down his face as a result of that that immediately when I heard and saw that, I worried what would happen if that was on our field. That would he have had the proper time to react to get that? So player safety is really the biggest reason why I'm here. Is I want to ensure that every player that's on that field is going to have proper shade from the sun as it sets behind. It's also why I try to push for more of our games to be at 4 o'clock this year. In the past couple of years, a lot of our players want to play at 7 o'clock, but I know as soon as that 7 to 7:45 time frame comes, it's an awful start to a game, and you kind of got to push through the glare of that and everything, and I just didn't want our players getting hurt. The second reason I have is just an enhanced viewing experience for our fans, is that fans can actually come, and I've had many families come throughout the years and say, I would love to come to a game, but I just can't watch it. It's either I have to sit up on the hill or I have to be right up against the backstop. And that's really the only places that you can go to watch a game. And, you know, we had a great evidence of this, is that the Final Four games for both baseball and softball this year were moved to Perkiomen Valley. And the baseball game, in my opinion, was very well attended, which I was very happy with. Just talking with Mr. Felty, there might have been easily about 500 or 600 people there, if not more. So I'm trying to provide an opportunity for our families and our fans to be able to watch the sport from an appropriate angle and view. I'm thinking of some potential enhanced facility possibilities. I know it might be a dream scenario to talk about bathrooms and all that, but I know that the only things we have now are porta potties on the tennis courts down there. That's all we have as options. So I'm thinking of a way that we could provide support beyond just baseball to maybe other communities. I know the tennis courts are heavily used. Perhaps underneath there could either be more porta potties brought in right there as an underground kind of area, or some type of facilities to help out with sports. And just with other sports too, I'm going beyond just baseball, that if lacrosse uses it for practice, if the bleachers are up and they have a higher angle for now film to record footage for their practices, I think that'd be great. If band is out there using it and you have a director up high on the bleachers, be able to see a top-down perspective. I know sometimes they're in the parking lot late at night with lights on doing their things there. If not, then they're in the stadium. Provides them another venue to do that. My fourth point up there is that there's just revenue opportunities, that now if we're able to host events and you're able to charge for seating, that now potentially from a school board point of view, you can recoup part of an investment there with that us as a booster program this year, and I've talked to Dr. Russell about this, is that we have $10,000 raised set aside already to give to the board to use for whatever fashion that you see fit. We have that ready to hand over immediately as soon as you guys would want it. And I'm making a push to make a commitment for another $10,000 next year as well. So we're hoping to come in that by April, May of next year, we could have $20,000 ready to give to the board to help commit towards this endeavor here. And we also look at it as a long-term investment that really it's going to help improve school pride, a sense of community, being able to come to these events. We can now host more postseason events like the Final Four. We can make our field more desirable for district playoff games. Increased media coverage and just overall better engagement of the community here. If you can go to the next one here for me, Mr. Weaver. I also gathered some data from other baseball coaches too. I had emailed them and said, hey, I'm planning on talking about this. Can you share? And these are direct quotes that they emailed me. I got quotes from Boyertown, O&J, and Springford. Springford this year is a great example of a team that only played at 4. But he noticed that when the sun started to set, it was directly bright, especially in his center fielder's eyes. We played O&J, and he noticed anytime from about 5:30 to sunset that the conditions were very awful. And it took away from the competitive balance of the game because you struggled to see the baseball. And he cited safety concerns too. And Boyertown said that grandstands would be a good barrier to help block the sun and then also offer a great seating option for spectators as well. And I posted the same question as well to families and players, and this was some of their opinions here too, is that if we provide grandstands, it would provide a great opportunity to watch the sport. And in addition to the turf that we've invested in, is that in my mind, we've invested all these, dollars into turf. It kind of makes sense to kind of cap it off here with now let's actually be able to watch all the sports that are played on this turf that we've invested in. Others have said on the far right that somebody was a graduate of PV, and he noted it would be an excellent addition. It would make PV a prime location to hold these events I talked about earlier, PAC championships. And along the bottom is that, we have this parent noted that we have a beautiful turf field, but the one thing that they noted that is lacking is just appropriate seating, and that the sight lines in the current field make seating options, as he said, terrible. And there's a few places where spectators can actually watch a game and see the whole field. A great example is we just had a district playoff game on Tuesday where a game ended with a diving play in left field. If you were a fan sitting on the third base side, you didn't get to see how that game ended. Is that you just heard the cheering and had no sight line to actually be able to see the end of the game. So it's not only player safety, but also thinking about our fans' experience here too with it. And like I said, the whole goal tonight was really just to start the conversation, to see, just to present to you, here's what we see as the issue, and kind of get this thing off the ground for what I think is long overdue here. But also to let you know that we have funds committed to the school, and we are highly dedicated, and we had a great group of 7th through 12th grade players this year that did an amazing fundraising program, and we're able to help raise $10,000 from 7th grade teams, 8th grade teams, our 9th grade teams, our JV, and our varsity, and they are very dedicated towards having this go through.
Thank you, Mr. Hinkle. Do you have any, is that it?
That's it.
Okay.
Good.
So I have a couple questions.
Sure.
I gave it some thought before the meeting today, and I have a couple thoughts. So obviously, our field is beautiful, right? Turf is beautiful. We have lights. We're lucky to have lights. Lots of fields don't have lights, especially at the high school level. I'm wondering why games don't happen after sunset if this is a known issue. Because we can't, field orientation, all of that. I'm just curious about that piece of it.
Sure. So we usually have within our PAC schedule, most games are either starting at 4 o'clock or 7 o'clock. It's just a standard within the PAC when games are usually played. If this were to occur, say during the summer, when the American Legion program uses it, we're talking about now in the middle of June, where sunset isn't until
Sure.
8:45, 9
Right.
o'clock, and
Right.
you don't really want a game starting at 9 o'clock at
So
night.
for fall ball, it's not so much an issue. It's really more,
So for the fall, we're talking. This is a major issue. Like we don't play night games there usually the beginning of April just because of weather with where we're at. But we're talking maybe late April into May when the sun starts setting later. That's why we don't push those times back.
so I happen to be leaving a meeting from, I don't know what day it was, whatever day that game was,
Yeah.
the East-West game. I actually
Yeah.
walked over to watch part of the game, and it was super windy. So that was the first thing I noticed, actually. I thought they were struggling a
Is
little
that on
bit.
Monday or Tuesday?
I think it was Tuesday.
Okay, I was at that game too. Yeah.
And I was all the way out on the first base side. And the sun is actually one of the things I noticed. I actually saw a couple of kids running in specifically to get sunglasses. I'm assuming maybe not all of them have them. I know that baseball sunglasses are not a cheap
Sometimes they want to wear them. Other times they put them as an accessory
as a
on top
hat.
of their hat.
I know, right? So I did notice the sun was an issue. I noticed the vantage point was an issue, and the wind. Well, you can't help wind.
Right.
So I'm wondering. So I don't question from that perspective that this is an issue. I'm just wondering if there are short-term fixes to address the issue. I mean, obviously, you've just been dealing with it, so that's why
Right.
I asked about the timing of the games.
Yeah.
And then the other piece of it that I was curious about is whether or not, I appreciate the 10K, that was one of my questions, so I'm glad you addressed it. Whether or not the other teams, so I guess lacrosse plays there, does field hockey play on that field?
Field hockey plays on the field. Softball also
Softball.
plays on the field. Yes.
Were those booster teams also brought into the loop to see about possible supplement?
So I haven't talked with them directly about funds in of itself. I've had conversations with the softball coach, an example of, hey, do you think this would be a good idea? To which I would believe that he's in agreement with that as well. I haven't gone the route of exploring other booster programs. Hey, could you contribute X, Y, Z to this?
'Cause those are well-established booster programs.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
I think that would be a question that collectively the district would, if we're looking to do a match or something like that, I think that's a fair question to have other booster programs that use the field,
Sure.
Specifically the baseball field, to use. And then the other question that I had was whether or not you had priced any of some of them. Listen, we're not putting in college grandstands at
Right.
PV, right?
Oh, yes, that I'm aware of.
They are lovely.
Correct.
But I'm wondering if you've given a conversation or thought to the price of
Sure.
a reasonable option.
Yeah, so we had initially in the fall one of those generic options. Mr. Weaver, do you mind going back to the one that I have that also has something like that? So that initial cost, and this was only through one person, and I have to remember what my booster club mom told me because this was just an initial, hey, we sent it to a contractor, what do you think? And I want to say that was around 200, 250 is about what that was. But that is our only quote that we went with because now I went back to the drawing board and I said, well, we need to now fundraise before we even do anything.
Sure.
And then we have not explored the route of getting a concrete quote out there because my thought process here is present it to you guys. Is it something that we'd be interested in? And then start shopping out, hey, can we have people come in and price out and put out bids? Because that's part of the process here that I am obviously not an expert in. You guys
Sure.
are, as far as how to put that out to different bids and proposals and all that.
Well, I mean, pricing things out and getting bids for services
Correct.
is one thing, but this is very specific in
Right.
terms of the need. And I know we have
Yes.
our baseball counterparts. You're all here together. So that's very helpful because I think the sky's sort of the limit with these things.
Right.
And so I guess my curiosity would really be, cost $250 to me doesn't sound like a crazy amount of money, although it's a lot of money.
Right.
$10K is not a small amount of money, but
Right.
it's nowhere near $250.
Right.
So I guess that's why my thought was what we could do in the meantime. I don't know if there's such a thing as like shade netting, like safety nets, but they also will help kind of
Right.
at least screen some of the sun.
The option of that would be is that you would have to basically install
Poles to
poles
hang the nets.
behind,
But
and
is
then you
that
have
a
to have that
cheaper?
up.
Is that a cheaper choice? Go ahead, Jason.
I mean, go ahead, yeah.
Just talking as a community member here, just to answer just a couple of your questions. From April to June, the sun sets from 6:35 to 8:10.
Yep.
So depending on the early games, meaning the early season baseball games to the later baseball games, you have that issue. So you would have to start, if you wanted to avoid that, start all pack games or all varsity or JV games at like 8:15, which means a kid's not getting home from school till
Right.
11:30, which
Right.
is not a positive.
Right.
PIAA has regulations on eye black. Technically,
Yep.
eye black is one stripe now. It can't be two stripes or
Down
three
your
stripes.
face,
It
right.
can't be
Yeah,
Ultimate
yeah.
Warrior look. Baseball sunglasses are a little bit different than sunglasses. They're not for direct light. They're for
Yep.
shade light.
Yep.
And so a hat and a sunglasses are going to protect when you're looking up and a glare.
That's the
when it's
design
coming
of them.
directly in your eye.
Yep.
Your eye black's going to help a little bit, but you're not allowed to wear thick eye black, which deflects it out. When you're getting direct sun, it's best to have no sunglasses at all because your eyes can change it just by that tilt that the players
Yeah.
give. That's the problem. Putting up batter's eye in the back would stop that, but then there would literally be nowhere to watch the game.
Yeah. Right.
Because then you're forced to watch the game from the hill,
Yeah.
which means you're standing. And
Yep.
a lot of community members that I've talked to don't come to games anymore because they've gotten older and they can't stand to watch the game
It was hard to
anymore.
stand there on the
Yeah.
hill. Absolutely.
And then you would force people to be first and third. The other negative, and I know Coach didn't notice this because he was coaching the game, because we had so many students attending the game, a lot of students were standing. And they're above the safety projection, and so you had foul balls
I noticed.
from
I noticed that.
left-handed
Yeah.
hitters flying out,
Yep.
and that becomes
And
an
running
issue.
back. They were running back and forth. Yeah.
They always
yeah.
run back to get the balls. but
No,
it's
I meant spectators.
yeah, it becomes
yeah.
a safety issue there.
Yep.
I mean, you're always gonna have those balls flying out, but you had kids standing
Yeah.
because you had so many people there. So that just answers that with the eye black, the glasses, and if you did put up a batter's eye or sun eye behind the catcher, there would then be nowhere to watch watch the game.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
when
I
you
mean,
go to watch a lacrosse game, it and some other the other activities that are on that field, it actually is a little bit worse than baseball because when you're watching some of the field hockey games that are out there, you're so far away that you can't see what's happening towards the
far side.
The far side.
Yeah. So that all makes a lot of sense. And so I guess that those are sort of my thought process ideas of what can you do in the meantime, right? And because this is not, it doesn't seem like it's going to be a light switch choice.
Correct.
I would be interested to find out what actually a hard and fast quote is. To me, I mean, like for example, this particular image looks like it would maybe take care of some of it, but the sun is still an issue
Correct.
above it, so you can only get so.
So this,
Hi, do you have something to add, sir?
th-
Okay.
this here would be a start. So the thought here is like, let's say we go something with like that bottom image. It would be a combination of this with almost what you're describing of now you put additional
Yep.
poles behind it
Find it, yeah.
to
Higher.
now serve that purpose.
Okay.
So that now it does that combined with better sight lines, all of that in one, yes.
So I guess that's where my thought was, you know, you put something in place, but then it doesn't really fix the issue or address the whole problem, and then we've spent money but yet not found a real solution.
It also depends on the height at which those bleachers can go up, because the alternative here too is that those are on the ground level. So if you build something of now you put those actually on an elevated footer almost, and now you have it off the ground and you have steps going up, it does now serve that purpose that you're describing
That what you were gonna
without
say?
having,
Okay.
is that what you're going to say, Mr. Stroman?
Yeah,
Okay.
we would, and I'm sure Mr. Fabrizio, Mr. Weaver, and I'm sure you do. My example is O&J Roberts has a very small grandstand on their park that's right behind home plate, just as this is. Their contour of their field is a giant hill behind their backside, and they have incorporated that exact style of grandstand into the hill.
Yeah, the
So it's
topography,
elevated.
depending on the field that you're, right.
Right.
Ours would be, and I mean, that's a perfect outlay right there of what would be great to have, and we would just have to put it up on piers.
Yeah, you just have to take that and you put it up higher,
Yeah.
and then it does
Now
exactly
you're
that purpose that you're talking about.
So, and then obviously ADA accessibility and then permitting and things like, I know Joe loves to deal with the permitting. So, those are the things that I sort of was the most concerned about, above and beyond the cost. You know, I understand that it's a lot of money, but I understand the reasons that you're asking for it. So I appreciate your advocacy. Does anyone else have any other questions? Those were my main ones.
Yeah, just couple comments here. I'm really glad you showed the picture of the players shielding their eyes.
Yeah.
I was super skeptical of this proposal until you showed that. I thought this was really
Exorbitant.
very much of a nice to have, but not essential. But you know, if you've got players waiting for the batter to hit, and they're shielding their eyes, they can't react in time. There's no way, and you're going to have a shortstop getting a line drive right between the eyes, and that's not what anybody wants. So yeah, this shifts it very strongly from the nice to have towards the need to have on the spectrum. We're talking about, you know, possibility of increased revenues coming out of this, and I'm just wondering, has any projection been made as to what kind of revenues we could realize from having a grandstand that would enable our own spectators, plus, you know, for any other groups that use the field, spectators that they might bring
Yeah,
in?
no calculations that I've done specifically. What I know that happened in the PAC championship game is they had security lined across the street, and then a check-in table towards the top where people were funneled in to then have to pay at the top before those steps go down by the tennis court, and then they would then filter into the seating that were there. I think if you're able to build something like this, depending on the scope of it, that would make charging a lot easier as far as managing who's coming in from down the hill to avoid that whole process in of itself there. I know at Boyertown and Springford do charge for their home games. I'm unsure, because I'm a coach, I don't pay the price for the ticket, but I'm unsure of what they pay per ticket for all their home games. But is it $6? So it's about $5 or $6 a ticket. So if you're going to have that event, usually in a home baseball game, depending on the opponent that we're playing, we'll draw in on average about 100, 125 fans. That now if you're able to charge $5 a person to be able to kind of sit in these grandstands over time in a home season, when we play about 12 to 13 baseball games, you do that number, it's about $5,000 to $6,000 a year that could be pulled in to help offset some costs too.
There are organizations, Dr. Weston, that look to rent facilities.
Well, that's part of what I was thinking about as well.
I was thinking
Yeah.
that revenue would probably come from outside
Yeah.
sources as opposed to home games.
But as we're,
That are looking for fields that have told me they won't even look at our field because there's nowhere for fans to go.
Yeah.
And that's when you charge
Yeah.
$450 for a weekend for a team, the expectation is you're going to have at least a place for my mom and dad
Yeah.
to sit.
yeah.
So if we would have something like that, those organizations, there's a whole queue system that's out there where tournaments look for fields. We would be able to get these field lists
Yeah,
in there.
no, absolutely. I appreciate that. And I'd like to see, as we are looking at the costs associated with this, to get some idea of what revenues could be pulled in as well. So, any kind of cost analysis should include that.
Thank you.
Correct me if I'm wrong, if we were to follow through with this on a next step kind of thing, we would almost need this to go out to an engineer, because like the stands that you have there, it says a Warrior baseball, remember that's sitting in a bowl, and we're talking about putting piers and everything there. Also, they would be able to look at the charts for where the suns are, different dates of the year.
Right.
The safety aspect of it, I think, towards the players is you were right in putting that at the top. Whether we need to address that in a temporary thing until we're able to build something that is more permanent, I think would be important. The engineering, sending this out for to do the site survey, figure out how high of a structure that we would need, and then if we could extend it with poles and put some sort of shade curtains there. There's a lot of pieces involved there.
I think that suppliers in general of these type of materials have engineers on staff that provide
But don't
services.
forget, it's going to need to be
So-
site specific. Remember how,
Right.
if you're
No,
standing at home
But
plate,
they would
it's quite a way.
they would be coming in to survey and actually give a quote specific to our site, I'm assuming, based
Yes.
on,
Yes.
right,
Yes.
similar to like the scoreboard requirements or any other of the stadium requirements. It will be site specific, but we don't have to solicit our own engineer. Is that what you're implying?
I'm just saying that there's a lot of work that will need to be done with this.
Yeah.
Sometimes,
When we built the fields on school property,
Mhm.
the company that we use, they have, and we had stanchions put in, we had bullpens, we had scoreboards, we had field.
They're a soup to nuts shop. They provide all the services. And I'm not saying you wouldn't still bid it out. I'm just saying that they provide site-specific renderings of what they're actually offering. And they probably have different levels and options, I'm assuming. So, these fellows, you have contacts for that information, no doubt, right? Companies that you, okay. So,
if the next steps is to get Mr. Fabrizio involved in this and
right.
shopping out stuff, I have no issues with that at
You
all.
have, that was my next question. So there's no meeting in June, so that puts a pin in an update at least until August. I think our next safety and ops meeting, I don't know if the calendar went out, Mr. Reaver, for when we have it on. Mr. Reaver can't wait. He's like, he can't wait for the next safety and ops meeting. So I would say that would be in conjunction with the start of the school year.
Yeah.
So that's several months to gather.
Yeah, that was the whole purpose of coming tonight, is that I knew this was kind of the last chance this calendar, well, this school year to kind of get it going, is that now if this can kind of get off the ground and get some legs and then do some shopping and do some talking and then come back in August, like you said, with
I think
with some
step,
ideas,
I think
it's good.
step one is, go ahead, Mr. Saylor. Do you have something?
School board mind if the team also has some vendors come out and put some scopes together on their own outside of Mr. Fabrizio?
I think it needs to be collaborative. I think whatever legwork I'm sure Mr. Fabrizio would be thrilled to have the legwork done by the team. I think looping in the other boosters that use the field is absolutely imperative in any options, because you're going to need to know how much skin they have in the game or that they're willing to to put up, you know, you need as many hands fundraising as possible. And then at that point, ideally, with good numbers, I think you can come back with a proposal of something to bring to the school district to say, you know, here's what we have to give you. Can you do a match or?
So one of the things that we need to be concerned about is what keeps me up at night, which is the whole bid process, procurement process. So getting a professional engineer involved in some way, shape, or form is great. Ultimately, we have to take that package that's reviewed, detailed, and it takes time, and then go out for a bid, and the bid process. So the bid process in and of itself, to advertise 3 advertisements 3 weeks in a row, a beginning week, an ending week, probably 5 to 6 weeks. So we could work our way through that. And then we have the results. And
What
then-
I was implying, Mr. Weaver, is if we could find vendors and suppliers that can actually engineer and also bid, I think that eliminates the step of having the bid package developed.
But there's still gonna be a bid process to that.
I understand that
So-
part, but you
and-
need to have the first one done in order to have something to match.
And I think the board should probably approve that engineer.
Through the vendor, how would you find an engineer to do this? What would be the steps that you would take, I guess, is the question.
So I would defer to Mr. Henkel. Who would you have come in? Mr. Fabrizio, who would you have come in? What kind of vendor would we agree upon? Because there could be 3 or 4 that do excellent work in this field. And we,
I know what you're saying because I understand the process. I think what could happen between now and August would be maybe the baseball group get some companies that we know, that they know, that does this type of work, come out, give some examples, some renderings, then go back and say, okay, then go back to the school administration and say, hey, this is what these companies are looking at. Some of them have done this before, sort of part of co-stars, you know, company that OJR used or the Jackie used, or this is a company that, you know, local leagues use that they've done this type of work before. And then before you get into a formal process, you open it up to bid and then go through that process.
yeah, I would agree with that.
That's what
think
I was
Getting
getting at.
examples of what people have done in the past is key to understanding where it is, because we have an idea of what we want as a collective. Engineers sometimes have a way of,
Throwing a wrench in the system.
Yes.
Yeah, understood. And so, are you looking for the go-ahead from the community, or?
The whole goal was, is this something that we can now go forward from the committee thinking that we can now explore into the engineer's route? And if we now come to the table with, we have options A, B, and C, is kind of what I was hoping to get out of tonight, is something that the committee would be interested in us exploring as a booster program and exploring other booster options there too and getting them involved in the game. Going out to engineers and say, hey, can you give us an idea of what you're looking for, cost points, all that, and then just getting the conversation going is what I was hoping to get out of tonight.
Understood.
Yeah.
Mr.
Yeah.
Kinney?
The thing that I would say, first of all, Coach, thanks for coming out and presenting this information. Also, congratulations.
Thank you.
So I was getting daily updates from my son. So,
Yeah.
But the thing I think is, it's good that you brought this now because the safety issue I think is the most paramount thing. So the sooner we can get to this, the better. And then the only other question I had to follow up on what Dr. Weston was asking about revenue, and maybe I should know this, is when you host PAC, is there, like, what is the split for, you know, the team or the school versus, you know, the league?
Most, if not all, of that ticket sale, I believe, goes to the PAC. We've never hosted PACs before because of our venue that we have, is that PACs are only held at Boyertown or Springford because they are gated venues where they can control admission and it has proper seating. And that's part of behind this, is that if we're now able to, say, do that and have a more gated atmosphere, will allow us to be able to host those events more in postseason play. And it just defaulted to here because we had turf. It was the only option that they had. And then we had to scramble for, how do we gate it? How do we charge with that?
And it's just the gate. So if we did concessions and everything, that would go to the team.
Correct.
Okay.
And that's where Spring City Legion program is able to benefit when they have it. Boyertown American Legion, when their boosters come out and do that, they're able to cap that, yeah.
So I have a couple of questions. Like, we need to define the scope. So, I mean, do you want restrooms in there? Do you want concessions? Because we need to think about, utilities and.
Well, that's where I threw in there. Here's the pie in the sky scenario: is that if the committee here is okay with us exploring options, I can explore options. We're just putting what you see there up. Option point number one. If you start going, as you're saying, Mr. Fabrizio, the facility route, we're now adding a much higher price tag on top of that as well, like significantly higher price tag. Just to route plumbing out there and to have to dig up and do all that is going to be an endeavor in of itself. I only threw that in there as an option that if we're looking at having restrooms serve a larger community, that I know that our tennis courts are used very often at night too, that if we're looking for some type of facility restroom option for the community who comes out and uses that, that's the only reason why I threw that in. We can explore that price tag and see what the difference is with the engineers as we kind of go look out.
All right, and one more thing. We're concreting the dugouts the first week of June. Should I
Yes.
hold off on that?
If we're doing this,
Yeah.
no, I think concreting is still good.
Okay. So the stands won't encroach on the dugouts?
Nope, I would say go ahead and concrete
Then-
away.
With the lacrosse field, I mean, are they going to feel that they don't have grandstands because the field's so far away now? Like, are you going to be able to watch that game from the new stands?
So
It looks kind of
usually-
far away.
So whenever field hockey has a game, so lacrosse won't have games on that field. Field hockey does have games on that field. Those stands that I showed right there
Built in.
are usually brought onto the field and then lined right along the field there when they have that. But if the grandstands are up, it would still aid other sports like field hockey who play on that field in the fall. If it serves a purpose of shade, if you're a field hockey player on there in the fall and I'm looking to my right to receive a pass and I don't have to look directly into the sun for that pass, it's going to serve as an inherent benefit for them as well, regardless if you can actually see the game or not as a fan.
Okay.
Coach, I think including the sales in there, you Miss Salisbury and St. Mary's in Maryland, they have beautiful stands.
Yeah,
too.
I was trying to keep the examples as local as possible so that we
Villanova has a
knew what
beautiful
they
field
were.
that they use. It's very nice.
one?
Villanova's field is very nice.
It is. So I was going to include Villanova's on there, but they have dugouts that are actually embedded into the
Different
ground.
situation, yeah. based
So
on
a lot of that
topography.
would be fixed if we wouldn't have to put it on pillars if our dugouts were embedded under the ground there. But now we're talking about a whole separate project in of itself that's going to require rerouting of electric in those boxes. And that's a whole bigger issue there that I'd rather not touch. So I'm trying to just work with what's already existing there.
Some more info then to come. Are you okay with it, Mr. Liggett?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank
Find
you.
out more. Bring it back
All right.
to us. Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Thank you.
Stay in touch, Mr. Hinkle.
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I have 1 minute. Summer projects are on time. We're going to make it by August 11th.
But your promise. August 4th.
Fourth.
You were paving.
Yeah, we're getting there. Real quick, so middle school east storage containers have started to arrive. They're going to be housing the univentilators. CM3 is going to start on 6/18. Substantial completion by 8/10. We're also spinning up 3 fire alarm systems at East, West, and Evergreen. I have permits in hand for all of them. Middle school west roofing is going to start. We're already starting to stage for that, as well as window seals and glazing on about 1,000 square feet. What else here? Evergreen, we're doing the dividing wall. That's going to be in July. The univents were pushed back, even though we ordered them last October a week. So I coordinated with our paving contractor. He's fine with that. It should be done before the band gets on there, and as well as the grease tank. The abatement's going to begin here on around the 16th of June and wrap up by the 2nd. So we're well underway on all that. Any questions?
So when these dates slip, hypothetically, you have contingency plans for all of those
Yeah.
things. Okay.
Real quick, we just have the ESCO update snippet from Phil's letter is here. The actual letter is posted into the board docs, so you can read that at your leisure and let us know. A lot of it has to do with touching base with Joe and communications as far as the project plans.
So I will say that I did read through the letter earlier today, and I noticed towards the bottom, maybe on the second page, there was some stipulations of dates, drop-dead dates, and I saw that some of them were very vague, perhaps intentionally so. So I'm wondering if some of those should be maybe codified in the letter. So if we're planning to use specific facilities for specific reasons, such as the student lot, for example, that they need to be clear by X, Y, Z, or.
That's a good point. As we've shared before, we do meet with CM3, the ESCO contractor, every 3 weeks. Those have spun up and gotten quicker and faster.
Yep.
Those meetings every 2 weeks at this point in time. And Mr. Fabrizio has been doing a good job about trying to get some solidified dates for
Because he
all
knows
of
how
these
disappointed
projects.
I would be. Okay. So I guess that's my big thing, is that there were some lower items. I mean, obviously there was a note in there that said the facilities will be used heavily over the summer, blah, blah, blah. Dates are subject to change. That was noted, but there wasn't drop dead commitments, you know.
I'm still working on solidifying all that, but
Okay.
they were told August 10th we need to have it back, a majority of it. The fire alarm systems will all be done by the first week of August. to
So
give us
August
a
10th
week
will
for
be too
testing.
late for some of the commitments, though, right? Like, for example, the student lot.
No, the student lot will be done by the 14th of July.
Unless the HVAC units and the cranes need to come. That's my point.
Yeah.
That's what I'm getting at. It's not so much that the duration of the work, it's more the other things that are contingent upon it being done before I understand, you know.
Got it.
Okay, so I don't know if it's worthwhile to be codified in writing in his letter or not. I don't know if that's of value, but that is something that I noticed. Thank you.
All right, so moving forward to facilities study discussion. As we talked about in the past, as we've worked with the Montgomery County Planning Commission for the attendance and enrollment projections, typically moving along in that vein has been an effort to somehow get some sort of professional review, engineer, architect, or some construction group to help review our facilities uses now, what they look like into the future, and to help develop some sort of a plan that we can then digest and appropriately move forward with as a prioritized nature. We've been doing such since the last AEM study that was provided in 2017, 2018. It's coming up on 8 years at this point in time. We've made a lot of good progress on the original listing because of the efforts of the administration and the school board allowing us bond issues, all of those things. It's kind of work together. I just thought it would be a good idea for us to talk about the possibility of going back out for a facility study at this point in time. Again, it would match the Montgomery County Planning Commission enrollment report that we just received, is in the final stages of a final published document. We saw the draft last month. And then that would help us develop a capital projects plan well into the 2030s. Having said that, we have reached out to various school districts. Hey, what do you use? How do you use? What do you do with your architects, engineers? They do facility studies. They do educational facilities use studies. They do athletic studies. We also had an athletic study done in 2018, 2019 as well as part of that big push. Unfortunately, there is a cost to that. And what that is somewhere between $25,000 to $50,000. It depends upon what the end product is that we would like to see. What kind of review, what kind of summary statements, how we want it laid out. With the AEM process, we had significant input into that. It was on the lower end, but we liked the product that was provided. You can get really fancy, which is not our goal, to utilize money just for something that looks great. However, there have been some changes. So we'd like a 3D rendering perhaps on some of these things that we can at least take a look at and view. That might be an adder, maybe something to look at. I don't know if the committee's interested in that. That would be what we would be thinking of in the short term. So it's open for discussion and questions.
Do you have anything?
No.
Okay. All right, so I have some big feelings about this, and I emailed them a little earlier. So when the original study was done, that was prior to my tenure on the board, and that was prior to Mr. Fabrizio coming on board. So one of the things that I felt was very important in moving forward in terms of facilities alignment at PV was the hiring of Mr. Fabrizio with his expertise and the background that he brought to the table. And I think that we've all seen great benefit, honestly, Joe, since you've come on board. And I know that you have a lot to manage aside, above and beyond just the facilities and the actual brick and mortar buildings. So kudos to you for that and all of your team. I know that they work very, very hard. So for me, what we did at the high school 2 weeks, was it 2 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago, I thought that that was really fruitful. I thought it was really helpful, and I thought that it was free. And so with that to-do list, interior and exterior, with the principal at the helm of that study, that type of review, I think that was a very good barometer of what could be put into a plan to have more targeted analysis from an architect. Or, for example, we talked in our walk, we talked about the library, we talked about the vestibule, we talked about safety and security, we talked about the atrium over here. Those are all things that are targeted items that we could now solicit information from a vendor, an architect, a designer. For $25,000 to $50,000, we could accomplish almost all of the things, or a big chunk of the things on the high school list, for example. So to provide money to a company to come and do a survey that we could independently do per building, I personally don't really support. Part of the reason I think, Joe, that you're here is to provide that for the school district in terms of the eyes and ears on the ground. But I understand the value of what's needed, but I also saw what was produced from that 17-18 study, and a lot of it is just not things that we used.
So maybe we can take, a two-pronged approach. The walk we did is more, I'll call it aesthetics.
Some of it was.
I think we also need to do a deeper dive into the inner workings, the mechanical aspects, a more thorough evaluation of the equipment that's in place if it hasn't been replaced since I've been here.
Sure.
I know we've been working,
And
chipping
you
away
have,
at that.
and you have done that. You've
Yeah.
done that with doors. You've done that with cameras. You've done that with HVAC. So, and those are things that you bring in subject matter specific experts in to provide us services. And I guess to me, unless you personally feel like this would be a benefit to you to do what your job is, I'm not quite sure that I see the benefit. Knowing what they're going to turn over. I think that if there wasn't you and we had nobody at the helm as like a subject matter expert, then maybe we would have to do that. But I think that you working alongside building leadership in each building accomplishes at least the to-do list, and then you can target who you need to call to get the...
Yeah, we can certainly start there and see how it develops, and then if we need to call somebody in, we'll revisit that.
Okay. Does anyone have any other opinion about that?
Yeah, I tend to agree that this may be premature to go for a district-wide analysis of this scope. Just because think about it, in the past, how many times have we paid for architects and engineers to make beautiful drawings of pavilions for our elementary schools that we've never built, or buildings for you to, for maintenance or administration buildings? We have a lot of drawings in our archive now that have gone nowhere. And so I would think if you, Mr. Fabrizio, have a need or request for something that's there, I'm sure we could entertain that, either with it being more targeted, like the baseball stands. I tend to agree, though. I think going for the district-wide, let's look at every facility. We do long-term planning as it is right now. You have your list of the lifetimes of many of our systems and everything. So I think between it being somewhat redundant and not focused, I tend to agree that maybe this may not be the time to do this.
And so don't misunderstand. I do think that there needs to be a schedule developed. And I know I sent an email about that with putting dates on the calendar for all of the buildings, as well as a timeline for individual buildings and accomplishing certain things. So for example, I know it wasn't part of the slide deck tonight. What's the takeaway from the high schools, study? You know, what can we accomplish prior to the next school year? That type of thing. And you don't have to
I ordered the kick plates.
Well, now that that's off the list, you're welcome, Zach. Okay. So some of those things were absolutely just maintenance aesthetic items, like almost like punch items, right? But I do think that there does need to be a planned schedule developed for analysis and documentation. I just think that it can be done internally. I guess that's my point.
So one of the things to add to the conversation comes from my world, which is if we're going to issue debt for any of this, we have a limited amount of money unless we issue bonds. Those people that invest in our bonds, those people that rate our bonds, they want to see a long-term plan. So it is absolutely crucial that we have some sort of a plan that takes into our priorities, what our priorities are for all of our buildings. That's the only reason why I would suggest that, is that this report would be an independent review that we could then take and assemble into certain various programs, much like we do with the ESCO programs. When we hit the ESCO programs, we identify what parts are priority from a mechanical perspective, and then we put that into the canister of what an ESCO program would look like to generate what the possible savings would be, which is how the ESCO runs. When we go to look and get our bonds that are rated, they want to see, oh, are you just throwing money out the window, or are you just are you looking at a prioritized list? Oftentimes, we give them the ESCO report, but then we give them the AEM report, which also says, oh, by the way, here's the other 350 things that we're searching for. That process has been very successful, both in terms of bond rating and making sure that our bonds, the people that invest in our bonds, want our bonds, and they feel like we have a backup plan. It is key for all of us that we have a backup plan. The idea would be that a facility study would help us to kick that off, to re-engage in that process, because now 8 years after the last one, there are other things like weren't even mentioned, like the baseball stadium that we heard tonight. That's not even part of any capital projects program. It hasn't been listed in the AEM study because it was not a priority item. I don't even think it was listed in the athletic report, now that I think about it. But those are the things that, from a priority perspective, we can then identify and then go out there and give confidence to those people that invest in our bonds. That's all.
Go ahead, Dr. Weston.
Yeah, I think the long-term planning aspect is really important here. And I think it's not something that we engage in enough. I feel like a lot of things that we are kind of presented with are sort of reactionary is the word I was looking for. Thank you very much. We react to things rather than plan for things, and I think the planning is something we need to do a lot more of. So I think this is a good idea to kind of, see where we are now, get ahead of the get out of being in crisis mode all the time, and start, really planning for the next, 5 to 10 years what we're going to be doing.
So I guess, Dr. Weston, I don't disagree with any of that.
Yeah.
I disagree with having to pay a company to do it. So I guess, Mr. Weaver, if you could explain as to why paying to have it done is different or better than creating the plan ourselves.
So I don't think it's necessarily better. I think what it is it helps maximize Joe's experiences and his professional expertise that he brings to the table with others to create that long-term plan.
Yeah.
And so that's not just fluff in the sky there. Just understand.
Well, you very
I think
rarely
Joe's
ask us to just spend 50
one-man
grand
band.
for
Right.
no reason.
He's a one-man
Right.
band. And so that's a lot. That's a lot for him to run projects, to also think ahead of time, work together and think ahead of time. And from a mechanical perspective, I have no doubt he's got all of this stuff in order. We're in far better shape from a mechanical perspective now than we have been, mainly because of the successes of the ESCO and that download of the information of the ESCO information that was given to us. And now we can upload, now Joe has it in the FMX, and so we can monitor and track everything from filter changes to maintenance and mechanical things that we didn't have the ability to do before. However, an independent, and again, coming from the success of the last one,
Pre-Joe.
all of these processes would benefit from a third-party review.
So in turning over the information and doing some of the legwork ahead of time, do you have any indication of how that would impact the information that's collected by a third party?
I would think that we would be heavily involved. The principals would be heavily involved. It would take, when they would come out, when we would identify one, they would go out and they would interview and they would review just like we did.
Right.
And again, that independent view would be helpful when taxpayers come up and say, why are you going out with another $8 million bond issue? Well, it's not just Joe sitting there saying, I think we should do that, or the board, or Jim Weaver. It's now a third-party independent engineer that we paid for, or architect.
I guess I'm missing why that brings it more validity. I guess I don't understand from a documentation
There's no
standpoint.
bias.
Some of it's a legal thing too.
Is there a legality to us actually making marching orders for what are, I mean, that's what I've been asking for, is what's the 3-year, what's the 5-year, I've been asking for that multiple times every time we talk about any type of capital improvement, right? We can't do everything at once.
Right. I think it's prudent. I don't know if it's illegal.
You want to be on a mic, if you can?
I know from an HOA perspective that you're not going to, unless you have a third party come in and do a survey, you have issues with insurance in your facility. You have issues with who you're banking with the facility. That's what Mr. Weaver's talking about, the bonding as well. That third party expertise allows for easier access to bond market, investment market, and insurance policies. Without it, it's just part of the system, unfortunately.
Okay, so Mr. Weaver, if you feel as though we can bring this to the full board for a discussion in June, I'm happy to entertain the conversation. I would prefer to see $25,000 or $50,000 go to actual materials in the buildings than to a third party. But that's my opinion. Do you have an opinion, Mr. Liggett, before we move it to the full board?
I tend to agree. I mean, I'm not looking to spend money for an
I don't have an
outside
issue
opinion.
spending the 50.
No.
I just think it should be on
It's
things.
not that.
You know, I just think we need furniture. We need,
Yeah.
electronic
No, I get
materials.
that. And on the other hand, of course, if this helps us identify the long-term needs and helps us better plan for the future, that's a benefit as well. Mr. Weaver, I know you like tying things into the bond market and the perceptions of the outside financial worlds to our district, and that conversation comes up in other venues as well, like when we're talking about the use of the fund balances. So I mean, that's not a topic for tonight, but if this is something that may assist in that, I mean, I'm open to exploring it. You got 25 to 50,000. That's a decent range as far as that. Like maybe perhaps a little tighter numbers on that, and knowing what is the charge that we're going to give these people. Like, and when I say charge, I mean, what is it we're going to ask?
What are they
I think.
actually turning over? to
Yeah,
us that
we need to know that, I think.
That's all fair. I just figured, from our perspective, as we all have a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that we spend taxpayers' money correctly, that's the only reason that I brought it up. And I think that, tying one-time, possibly, bond issue, we don't know that for sure, tying one-time money into one-time projects to make sure that our infrastructure is
secure.
sustainable,
Yeah.
yes. That's all. And
So-
it's good discussion. I appreciate
Absolutely it
Absolutely.
is. So June, we can revisit. I would like to get everybody's opinion on the matter before we,
Appreciate it.
yep.
Absolutely.
Dr. Weston?
Nothing more to say.
Okay. So we'll talk about it more in June. That would be really helpful. And
Great.
then in the meantime, if you could do a little work in terms of a calendar map of what we can do in the interim, that would be, I think, really appreciated as well. Do you have something else to add, Mr. Liggett? I see your fingers.
No, I'm good. I'm done. I'm more or less nodding in agreement.
Okay,
You know,
good.
get us some more stuff and go ahead and bring it to us.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate the discussion. Okay, and as part of that, we would have to create some sort of a team to go through that. So that's there, and that's open to interpretation in any way we want to make it. All right. Anything else from the committee?
So the only thing, nothing for approval in June, is that my takeaway?
Correct.
Because we're good on everything. Everything else, for discussion-wise, we're going to just have, baseball's going to do research. We'll revisit that
Yep.
in August, just to recap. And then capital projects, we'll get a small little update, maybe any more information in June,
Yep.
and information on this in June as well.
Yep.
That sound good? And then nothing from you, Chief Miller. Okay. All right. We ran a little bit over, but not too bad. We're rolling right into the next one anyway, right?
Excellent. Okay. Thank
right.
you.
So then we will do, let's say, 7:30, we can resume, or do you need a second? We maybe need a second to regroup a little bit for education. Okay? Cool. Thank you.
Does anybody know who's going to run the show tonight for education?
I mean, is that a joke?
Hey, look, no, yeah, that's not a joke.
That wasn't a joke?
No. Dr. Russell's not here.
Hot mic, hot mic.
All right. All right, team. We got rid of Mr. Weaver. You're in charge. Let's do it.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to switch to the first thing. All right, so our agenda for this evening, Dr. Sachs and Mrs. Miller will talk about education at work. Thank you for being here. Dr. Fuller will discuss the Viking Zone. Mrs. Franciosa will discuss the Youth Aid Panel update. And myself and Dr. Handerhan will talk about our full-day kindergarten and give you an update on that program, as well as talk about the Act 48 committee meeting that we had this month, and then address any of your concerns or items. So first up, we have Dr. Sachs and Mrs. Miller.
Good evening. So we wanted to kick off, is this on? Sorry, I apologize. Wanted to kick off this evening, if we take a look at slide 4, just talking about our Education at Work program. I think a lot of people don't understand or even realize what it is, and it's in our guide. Our students don't always know, and I don't think it's really talked about or advertised. So we wanted the opportunity to bring it to your attention and share a little bit about Education at Work, that it is an opportunity for our students to get course credit and so forth, and really gain some traction out in the world and build relationships. Mrs. Liz Miller is here with me this evening. She heads up and supervises that program and really supports our students as they're out in our workforce. So just wanted to give you an opportunity to see and learn about it. It's a program that can run either 9th or 10th period. We usually buddy it up against 8th period lunch. It is credit worthy. Students do receive credit for it because there's an educational component to it. So that component runs our students through interview processes, talking about setting up resume building, and just good etiquette, how to carry themselves, how to dress, how to present, how to communicate. So those are all classroom components to our Education at Work program. And Mrs. Miller leads that work in the beginning of the school year before our students go out. Those relationships have been built across the course of the year, the many, many years it's been in process. And it's been great because our relationships have brought it to the point where they're starting to ask for our students, right? So it's, do you have anybody else for us? So it really is an awesome opportunity that our students have. There is an application process for it. So our students actually, kind of let us know that they're interested. We actually pulled a whole bunch of students down. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Students who have an interest in expanding the repertoire, but maybe didn't have the opportunity or didn't know that they had the opportunity. So we did a little bit of digging and supporting and conversations with students and some families as well, and just making them more aware of the opportunities that we have within our building without having to go elsewhere. Okay, so with that, where would we like to go? In the past, Education at Work has fluctuated between being both juniors and seniors to just seniors. And we see our numbers shifting a little bit, and we'd like to go back to juniors and seniors. So that's really kind of why we're coming forward with you this evening. It's just saying, hey, we'd like to move in this direction, where we'd like to go, and also taking a look at possible other options in the future. Right now, our program, like you've seen, is at the end of the day, that 9th and 10th period. It allows our students to kind of leave us after they've established their courses in the morning, and then kind of continue on with their work in the afternoon. We have visited other school districts who do it. North Penn and Souderton have really robust programs for Education at Work, have both AM and PM programs, where ours just is solely a PM program. So that's an opportunity possibly in the future. The other piece that is a little bit of a challenge is that transportation, right? So our students, mostly seniors, are 18, typically have the opportunity to drive. Might not always have the means, but we have worked through some of that with families and supporting that way. Or they'll drive themselves. what we'd like to do is talk to some juniors and families who are willing to go down that road if they can provide their own transportation and start to dabble in that area. And if they're interested in moving that, and we have quite a few students who are interested in that next year and would be able to have the means of transportation provided by their family or themselves. So that is really, an opportunity for them. We also, I really think, and I'd like to, again, to continue networking with people, but it's a great way to build relationships in the community with the school and understand that partnership and how they can give back. And there's a lot of on-the-job training that happens with those students, and we'll show a couple examples of that as we move forward. I'll allow Mrs. Miller to share some of that because they're her successes and the relationships that she's built with the different employers that are out there and the students themselves. So just wanted to make sure that you realize where we were coming from as far as really building at a larger capacity with our own local community. So how do we get there? Where we really started, we started a conversation around North Monco Technical Career Center and the numbers of students who are applying and not being able to be accepted. And knowing that those students are looking or finally finding that focus by 10th and 11th grade year, and not having that opportunity and not knowing what to do. And there's students who are really found their focus, and we're looking for a way to reach out to them and provide them an opportunity here right at the high school, and building those connections without having to utilize North Monco in that way. Offer transportation possibly in the future, provide some flexibility in the scheduling. Really, one of the reasons why we're here, like I said, was advertising our program. It's okay. And really, there's a standard written permission. Our parents are heavily involved. They know what their students are up to, and working to try to relieve the district of liability and so forth that way as well. It's been, the students that we've met with have been incredible. So I just want to turn it over to Mrs. Miller. She can share a little bit more with you about her students.
Hi everyone, I'm Liz Miller. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. I normally talk in front of high school kids. I'm used to standing and pointing. I'm sorry, I can't sit down. But in any event, just to reiterate some of what Dr. Sachs was saying, so a lot of these students, because we have so many seats that we are given at the tech school, they don't have access. If the tech school is full and these students get denied, then they're choosing classes, they're choosing electives that maybe don't necessarily pertain to their career interests or their futures, but they need to obtain the credits and stay in school. So this is allowing them to learn all of those things. It was very successful this year. If you look at the top, that's student Brady. And I did ask them, they all gave me permission, no one worry. That's Brady. He's at Rivercrest, and he's learning turf management. And he is very interested in that field. He has decided for right now he's going to go HVAC, but turf management is his backup. And that is their superintendent, Tim, who has asked me, well, who's going to replace him for next year? I need someone to replace him. So we actually do have another student. He has hired 2 of our students now after Brady. And there is a student filling in for Brady next year. So we'll see how that works out. Below Brady is Mel. She is at a salon, and because of her hours, the salon opens at noon, and she starts at 1, and she usually works until closing. So she basically works almost full time. So they've taught her a lot of skills, even including how to do inventory and things like that, which is really neat. We have, it says request access on the videos. I'm hoping we can play them.
I have them on here, but I don't know.
Does Caden's portfolio or photo portfolio, does that open by chance?
Yeah.
All right. So we'll roll with Caden's for right now since the videos aren't up. But one of our students was employed by AJS Services, and this is what he's been doing. This is what he's been learning. I actually go to a different house, and the people at the houses are very welcoming. and they show me, and they will tell me, oh, this student is great. This is what he's doing. He's supervised by Anthony. Anthony owns AJS. And actually, this is one of my favorite stories, when Caden was having car trouble and couldn't get to work, they gave him a company pickup truck. They said he's become such a valuable part of our crew. They gave him the company vehicle, and that's what he has been driving to school and then to work for the past 3 months, roughly. So he also said to me, well, do you have anybody else for next year? And Caden has signed a contract with him. He's going to go full-time when he graduates. So it's really neat what the kids are learning, what they're doing. Unfortunately, I don't think those videos are going to play, but maybe we can get that fixed.
They'll be on our, I think that they are in our slideshow.
You give me access and I'm.
Okay.
Or Kevin.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
While they're peeking, maybe we could ask some questions. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, I don't even know where to start.
I know, it's so exciting. I agree.
Well, I'm not necessarily excited about it. I was trying to find information about this on the district website, and I'm obviously not looking in the right place, because the only place I found anything was in the program planning guide. It's like 2 sentences, which doesn't tell me anything really. How long have we been doing this? Who is eligible for this? How many kids have gone through? What do they do? Who supervises them? What are they taking during the day in school? How are they fulfilling their requirements? I almost don't even know enough about it at this point to ask the right questions.
Sorry, thank you. So the students take their normal requirements. These would be elective requirements, like they would come in as electives in their courses that they would have, like they still have to meet their math requirements, social studies, science, all of those requirements are still in place for graduation. This would be an opportunity for them for elective courses. They're in addition to that. Liz Miller actually supervises, so they have to submit paperwork to her monthly, weekly, depending upon what the item is. They have reflections they need to do. She goes out and does site visits, meets with their employer. They do evaluations of the students and give feedback as well. So it's really a partnership back and forth.
Mhm.
So there's constant communication and clearances, all that kind of stuff.
How are students compensated for their labor?
Some do and don't get paid.
So most of the students this year, they are getting paid. They're getting paid by the company. And the reason why I know that is because they are required to turn in their pay stubs and log their hours. They are allowed to black out their personal information, but I need to see that they are being paid a legal wage. I also need to see that they are fulfilling the hour minimum requirement for the course.
All right.
So I think you describing the tech school as a comparative, one of the questions that I had was the portrait of what type of student this is a good fit for. And I know, Dr. Sachs, you've been really a great proponent of other pathways. And I really think that this is a perfect example of other pathways that don't fit a college-bound box, but are obviously trade-focused. They don't necessarily need to be, you can learn hands-on activity and content without actually sitting in a classroom. And I think this is a really valuable pathway for non-traditional learners.
But it's also,
Some of these students are going to college
I was
too.
going to say,
I
some
understood. I saw that. I don't want to minimize. I don't want to minimize that at all. But I think that
providing options and opportunities,
creating
right?
options and opportunities and removing barriers for students that need to fill an elective, so they don't just have to take a class. They're not already driven towards a particular subject area. This is that hands-on subject area of interest.
Dr. Weston, to one of your questions, this is for parents when you enter the high school. This is something that is sent. Information is sent to them. I know a couple students that are actually in the program now, so the information is given to them for those parents that are looking for this type of I don't want to say activity. It's not an activity, but type of education that the school provides. Yeah.
And I'm going to be honest, I didn't know about this program. And I didn't know about the program until I came here,
Okay.
right? So I learned about it by reading through the program.
I was curious as how it was different than career study or different than, I didn't understand the difference until tonight.
That's what I thought this was talking about at first, because
Right.
career study, that last month or so of senior year, where the students go out and they kind of shadow people in the workplace, but this is something very different.
Yeah.
Totally different.
Very different.
Yeah.
So career study is a 2-week period of time for seniors to go dabble and see if they like or don't like or
Job
set up.
shadow, yeah.
Correct. Education at Work is a credit program, so that runs the course of the full year. So that would actually be, depending upon the student, 1 to 2 credits. So we have students that have dabbled, we'll see that in a later slide, but that have gone into Education at Work and then have decided, hey, I really like this field, I want to go into education. And they're looking at Westchester University.
So how, Mr. Saylor, you said the information goes home to parents. What information gets sent? Because like I say, I couldn't find anything about this anywhere on the district website except that 2 sentences in the program planning guide.
I think part of our goal is to expand the information and get it out to folks, build that capacity, advertise it more. We thought this was a great starting point since we're looking to have these conversations and make a higher level of awareness for our students and for our parents. So I know I've just randomly talked to folks and asked them what their children are into, or I've heard stories from folks, well, my student, they're sitting in class, they're
Yeah.
struggling to like school, they
Yeah.
really are interested in something different. What are what options are out there, Dr. Sachs? And
Yeah.
I'm looking in the planning guide. They don't want to take business apps maybe or whatever it is. What's out there? They're very hands-on type students.
And
I've got something for you.
And they're not tech school students, but they,
Right.
for
Well-
one reason or another.
well,
Or they applied and couldn't get in.
That's part of the problem. So,
Yeah.
Dr. Weston, this is a niche community within the PV community. Why it's not on the PV website? Probably because it's not brick and mortar inside the building. So what normally happens for the students that I've known that have gone through this program is they didn't get into the IU or because it's full, right? And that's, this is. I've talked about this ad nauseum. I think you have as well. We would love to see more IUs out there, another building, more capacity, more ability for the tech school, not the IU, excuse me, the tech school to take on more students. That's not happening. This is an internal way for that to happen. It's not a lot. How many this year is it?
I think it said?
Yeah, it's a handful, right?
Yeah, now next year we do have a lot more students that have requested the course.
Yeah.
And a lot of, this is my second year doing this program. I just completed the CTE certification from Temple, and then I took this over. This is my second year. A lot of my referrals I'm finding are now coming from guidance. So I took some time and I went to the guidance department meeting and we spoke at length, and now that they understand it and they do scheduling with the students, they're able to say you would benefit from this program. I know what your
Yeah.
career interests are, and that's where a lot of that was done from.
And that's where it's coming from. That's where that information is most coming from. You're not getting into the tech school. Tech school tells you there's potentially something else at your school, or you're in, sophomore year, having a meeting with your guidance counselor. Your guidance counselor says, hey, let me talk to mom and dad about something that we offer here. Is that something that's interesting?
I was really curious about the portrait of what type of student would be interested in it. But that question I think has been answered. I'm wondering if this is a pathway available to students that do have interests that are maybe dually elective interests. So for example, they're part of the music department, they're part of the art department. Those type of interests, are they still then able to use this as a pathway as well? There's no barrier there. I didn't know if schedule-wise, so you know how sometimes if you have to choose a thing, you can't fit time in.
Right, and again, it's what fits in the schedule.
Right.
So it is taken for credit. So
Right.
something that maybe students would want to learn how to
Yeah, the School of Rock, absolutely.
right? I'm sorry.
Oh, say all of it again. No. So in other words, but there was no
anybody-
barrier
No,
if you
not
have
at
more
all.
than
There's
one
no
set of
necessary,
interests.
no necessary profile. I believe what brought it to light was the overwhelming interest in the trades and students who are looking at other options for themselves or additional. I mean, we have a lot of students who leave North Monco who continue it on into college, right? So it just gives them another opportunity or a different opportunity. You know, and that could be anything. And we have a student, I believe we listed in here, is interested in criminal justice, wants to go shadow, or wants to go try to, you know, support paralegal work. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for our kids, no matter what their interest is.
Well, any avenue
Whether-
of any job, right? So
It's whether it fits into their schedule, depending upon what they're taking and when they're taking it, right?
So in developing it, do you foresee, and you may have sort of like, like you said, this is your second year, like a catalog of vetted opportunities?
Yeah.
Or what is the criteria if, you know, a student wants to take this pathway? What's the criteria of, and standard at which, you know, for example, the construction company, like you said, there's a component that they are responsible for. What is the criteria that they have to meet on behalf of?
All of our
Partnership.
employers have to sign. There's a contract at the beginning that goes out to the employers saying that yes, they agree to do the site visits and I can come and meet with them. They also have to fill out clearances. So then I have all the employers' child abuse and criminal clearances of the student's direct supervisor. And they also have to agree to do the marking period. I do the monthly evaluation. The employer does the marking period evaluation for the students. And they agree in writing to all of this at the beginning.
Okay, so there is a list of approved employers or a set of criteria for the types of jobs that would be eligible or appropriate for this program?
We are developing a list of employers currently that we have worked with. Can we flip to that slide that says what does success look like for a minute? Just to give you a visual. Yes, next one I think. Just to give you a quick visual, so these are some of the businesses that we have worked with. So I would have clearances on file for those individuals that were supervising our students, and we've developed a relationship there with them. Like I said, I go visit each student at least once a month, so I get to know who their supervisor is, and develop usually a pretty good relationship with their supervisor. If there's any issues, they will email me, oh, the student has been late lately, or, you know, something is going on. But those are all the people that we work with. We are looking to expand that. So right now, if there's time in the day, I went to Jiffy Lube the other day and just introduced myself and said, in case we get a student who's interested in automotive, is this something that you would partner with our district? We are trying to place a student interested in cosmetology and criminal justice for next year. So I met with Mr. Miller, Dean Miller, today, and he's going to help me try and find something for that student. So we are trying to expand the partnerships. We've reached out to the Chamber of Commerce. Renee was extremely helpful trying to build all those relationships.
Okay, I'm a little more assured knowing the involvement and kind of how the students are connected with employers, because they're, you know, it's one thing for, you know, students to be getting vocational training opportunities that they might have had at the tech school, but because of space considerations, enrollment limitations, they may not be able to get. It's another thing if a student is somehow hooked up with somebody that has them going door to door selling magazine subscriptions.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that would not be
And, you know, I worry about this being,
Exploited.
you know,
Yeah.
exactly, you know, our students being used as cheap labor. Nobody wants that, and I don't want to see anybody even put at any kind of risk for that. So, you know, this is what I say, we need more information about this program. It needs to have a lot more information made available. I appreciate the presentation tonight, but I'd really like to see some more transparency about the program on the district resources. You also mentioned about how this could fit into a financial literacy program, and I'm not quite sure I see how that works.
So the Pennsylvania State Department is requiring
Right.
a financial literacy
Right.
course.
How does this connect with that?
So what we had spoke about potentially, this was maybe where do we see this going? But we had spoke about incorporating that into students' junior year. Well, if students take financial literacy and now the state is requiring a half year, so let's say semester 1, they take their financial literacy course, what do they do semester 2? They are forced to pick a half-year elective, which there are only so many of. So if this has the potential to maybe, for students who they have financial literacy 9th period or 10th period, this affords them an opportunity to have another half-year elective. And maybe instead of being forced into web design, they're saying, okay, well, you know what, I know that I want to do, even if it's something that is college bound. I have a student right now, she's going to Penn State. She's sure of it. But she's not sure. Do I want to do early childhood education or do I want to run a daycare? She knows she loves kids. She's going to work in a daycare next year.
As part of this program.
Yes. And then she's hoping to figure it out. What's my passion? What do I really want to do? So maybe this is something that then those kids can fulfill that other semester with and really give them an opportunity to get out there.
Almost like a field study.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I
She'll
think
know
truly,
after the second semester if she wants to work at a daycare. Yeah.
and truly for some of these students, just the balance. A lot of the feedback that I get is the balance of, oh my goodness, I have to balance work and school and homework or sports. I have to show up every day. And I'm like, yes, you do.
It's part of your job. Yeah,
Or they'll
right.
tell me, well, I texted my boss that I was going to be 10 minutes late. You texted them. What time did you text them? Just going through these processes, some of them are unaware. Oh, I need to give them 2 weeks notice. I should have a job lined up before I quit my job. Some of these things are not, yeah. So these experiences for students, I think, are very helpful.
Aren't
Very
those things
beneficial.
part of the school experience as well?
But in the school,
Showing up for class on time, doing your assignments on time, things like that. I mean,
absolutely. But reporting to your English teacher 4th period, I feel, is much different than reporting to your supervisor every day.
I think this makes it a much more, when we're talking about differing pathways for different types of learners,
no.
I think that this allows for an opportunity for a student that maybe wouldn't necessarily understand the weight or gravity of a real world application. I think there's a lot of sheltering in the building that, just by the nature of the way school is, right? Where this doesn't have as much hand-holding, it allows for more autonomy. I think it's fantastic. I'm really happy to have learned about it tonight.
Can I ask a question? So we know that some of our students go to the tech school. So say if a student was at the tech school in the morning and they had enough credits and they had space in their schedule, could they still participate in this as an elective, or they can't because they're at the tech school?
Schedule, I say, correct me if I'm wrong, because
I'll take that one.
Okay.
So the tech school takes all of your elective credit, right, and provides only the opportunity to earn your core credits toward graduation. So if you go to the tech school is your elective instead of music or education at work or PE in some cases. So
I have to run to another meeting, but I just wanted to say, really appreciate, having a spotlight on this program. It's been around a couple years. I think it's a great board-approved program, and any opportunity to get more students aware that this is a potential for them to make some life-changing and aspirational goals is great. I know some students who have been through the program, and it's run absolutely fantastic.
And I agree with Dr. Weston. I think that part of the reason we're here tonight is to bring attention to the program, And you know my feeling that it doesn't exist until there's a brochure about it. This needs a brochure, right?
The other piece to that, you know, and we've built the relationships, and I'll say Liz has built, I shouldn't say we. However, it's really been student-driven, student interest-driven. So they conference and they share what their interests are, and we try to help them in matching that and guiding that process. So we have a student this year interested in welding. He did not get accepted. We're looking around to businesses that are in that world, you know, and saying, okay, well, what and who, where is that offered? You know, is there somebody local that would be able to be taking on a student and be willing to do that? And that's where our advocating comes in. So that's some of the work that we talked about doing this summer and getting out and even closing out this school year when we have time to get out and be building those relationships and making them aware that that's an option, you know.
I echo Mr. Saylor's remarks. I think that honestly, and Dr. Sachs, I've heard several years running, you talk about different pathways and different opportunities, and I'm glad that there's like a symbiotic relationship and it's actually coming to fruition in a really real way. With regards to the chamber, obviously that's a great avenue. I know that Dr. Russell is involved, you know, heavily with the chamber, and hopefully then that'll open up even more doors as conversations start. I'm sure Dr. Fuller has been also very supportive in his evaluation of our offerings, and the idea that, I mean, truly, in terms of doing school differently, that's what this is to me, and I really appreciate that it's above and beyond, especially seeking out relationships for placements. That's above and beyond. So I really appreciate the work associated with that. Yeah, really awesome. Anything?
I think that the high school needs to really highlight this. This is phenomenal. I'm blown away. I'm sitting here thinking, can I take this to my district? I mean, just the idea of kids being able to have the opportunity to participate in something that they may have interest in or they're passionate about, and just really develop and determine if this is something that they might want to pursue. And like Madam President said, just the multiple pathways that it allows students, I think is phenomenal. This is absolutely amazing. Great job.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Miller and Dr. Sachs. We'll transition to the youth aid panel update with Viking Zone. Never mind. Dr. Fuller and the Viking Zone.
Thank you, Mrs. Miller. And thank you to Amy. Amy actually represents us on a committee with the Tech School Consortium that is trying to address issues of the lack of space at the tech school and what offerings we can bring to the high school. And so sort of in the long term, we're also looking at, this is sort of about things that we can't accomplish here. I don't have a nail salon here, or I don't have those things. But we've talked about, what can we do in our shop, right? How can we be more purposeful about creating a pathway of courses that students can go through with our industrial technology department? How can we think about how graphic arts is taught in our art department and align that maybe in a more career-oriented way? So we've had those conversations administratively. I'm interested in building out some pathways for some of our students that maybe have a more vocational bend, so that those students who get left behind because they don't fit at the tech school have a place here. So now I'll get off my soapbox now and talk about what I'm here to talk about, which is Viking Zone. We said that we would run a 2-week trial of Viking Zone from April 1st to April 16th, and we did that here at the high school. And so if you remember, that took a half an hour in the morning and sort of opened our campus, opened our facilities, opened our classrooms, pulled teachers off of duties and brought them into their classrooms to serve students for a half an hour in the morning, and be available for what their students needed when their students needed it. We served breakfast, we opened this room, we opened the gym, we opened the fitness center. And so we also collected results from our students, our families, and our staff members about their perceptions of what was happening here during Viking Zone. And so I'm here to share those results with you today and hopefully make a recommendation. So our student results, we had 1,265 student respondents to our survey. We opened it up all at one time and said, here, take the survey. So we had 1,265 results. And we asked the students first, what did they do during Viking Zone? So at least once during Viking Zone, which of these things did you do? And you can see the most popular answer was that at least once during Viking Zone, students slept in or otherwise used their time. But following that, right, students were doing schoolwork, students were seeing their teachers, they saw a teacher to work on something else, right? So whether it was, I went to work on a project, I went to work in the presence of my teacher, not necessarily to get help, but to complete the work there in the room. So you can see the results here. This is a long presentation, so I won't read every word of the slides to you. You can flip the slide now. We asked the students, was Viking Zone helpful in managing your daily routine at school? You can see the results. 1 was strongly disagree, 4 was strongly agree. We asked if teachers were available. I got similar results. We asked if it was easy to scan in and get where I wanted to go during Viking Zone. One of the things we tried to do was we wanted to have student accountability in that we wanted to know who was here, right? I take my responsibility to families being responsible to their children very seriously. And so I need to know who's here and who I'm responsible for at any given time. So with a flexible period like this where students are allowed to stay home, they're allowed to be late, I need a way to determine who's here and who's not. We actually got, I want to say 16 barcode scanners and put them at the entrances, and we asked students to scan their IDs as they walked into the building. Dan Pennybacker, one of our computer science guys, built a system by which that barcode would log you in as in the building. But other than that, we wanted to remove barriers. Right, we didn't want like a where are you going, what are you doing, are you on time kind of feel to what was happening during Viking Zone. We wanted it to be fluid so that students could move from space to space. So we said to students, once you scan in, you can go where you need to go, right? Not behind locked doors, but you can go where you need to go. If the fire alarm goes off, we'll meet you in the stadium. It's going to take a while, but we're going to take attendance. So that was that. That's a duplicate. So no student is going to say that they behaved poorly during Viking Zone. So we asked them whether other students behaved according to the code of conduct during Viking Zone. And they told us that by and large, they did. Our comments, we had 1,200 and something responses, and so the comments go on and on and on. I read them, and then I ran them through ChatGPT, and I asked it for some representative quotes. I checked to make sure that the representative quotes were not hallucinations by ChatGPT. They are actually in the results. But many students, so I will say that many, many more, probably more than 1,000 of the open-ended responses were positive, right? And so I don't want to give the impression that these pros and cons were sort of equally shared as impressions of Viking Zone, but it is worth mentioning growth areas. So many students felt that 30 minutes was not enough time to make significant academic progress or fully relax before the school day. They asked us for more time. I would expect that, right? Because it was new and it was useful. Some representative quotes you can read there. Teacher availability was an issue, and I struggled to find a representative quote from a frustrated student whose teacher was not available that I could put before you. So I will say there were those representative quotes, asking that, I showed up, my teacher wasn't there. That was challenging for me. If you look at the data, that didn't happen much, but when it happened, it was frustrating for our students. And so we had a conversation here today in that room, in our department coordinator meeting, about consistency of availability of our teachers during that time.
So, Dr. Fuller, is the expectation that, so that's going to happen. People are going to get sick.
Correct.
So is there an expectation that there will always be someone there for them?
There is not. When a teacher is sick, then a teacher is sick, right? The impression that I got, having called out, I think, is one thing. Like, I just think that's the way the cookie crumbles at that point, though. You could probably find another English teacher or your past English teacher to help you with your paper, right? But the impression that I got from some of these quotes was like, I showed up and my teacher wasn't there, and I got frustrated, and then they walked in, right? Which is an issue for us, all of us, to address, because we have asked our teachers to be available to our students during that time. Give me the next one. Students in technical programs felt left out or conflicted by schedule overlaps. There is an overlap with AM Tech. It is a very short Viking zone for our AM Tech students. I don't know that there's a lot we're going to do about that if we keep Viking zone in the morning. We have asked our students, we have explained to our students that these are both great opportunities, but the tech school is a powerful educational opportunity that we want you to take advantage of during this time. But biotech was an issue this year. In particular, we had 1 or 2 students whose schedules were turned upside down by the times, not necessarily the time of Viking zone, but what that did to the rest of the schedule really put some students for those 2 weeks in an uncomfortable position in terms of making it to, the conflict really was an AP physics course got cut even shorter than it normally does by having to go to biotech. And so we worked with that family and worked to find a solution with them, but it's not something that we want to duplicate. So as we will proactively build a schedule this year that takes Viking Zone into account where that doesn't happen.
Can you just illustrate that a little bit more clearly? I'm not exactly sure how that would work.
Right.
With this particular situation you're
Sure.
describing.
With biotech.
Yeah.
So I can think of one particular student who had AP Physics C, right? And the student was already leaving AP Physics C early to get in her car and drive to the tech school to take advantage of the biotech program there.
Is that in the afternoon?
That's in the afternoon,
Okay.
in the biotech in the afternoon.
That's an issue. My daughter had that issue as
Correct.
well.
Yep. So because the day shifted backwards, right? That time when the student felt she needed to leave for biotech wound up being earlier in the AP Physics C period. So now she's losing even more AP Physics C for those 2 weeks, right? And so we can do a lot with lunches, right, to alleviate that pressure on the student schedule. It's possible. It was just not anticipated for 1 or 2 out of 1,600 students that would happen until they told us that it was happening. And so that was a challenge for that student and for us. We said to the student, this is a perfect example of where Viking Zone could be helpful, right? Your AP Physics C teacher is here during the morning for Viking Zone. And so if you get to your AP Physics C teacher at that time, you might be able to alleviate some of that pressure. She did, but it's not the same thing as being in a lab and being in a class and being in discussion.
Well, there's a larger issue there too. That's not necessarily Viking Zone related, but just the alignment of the individual school schedules with the tech school schedule.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, that cuts across
Absolutely.
all sorts of programs, not even considering Viking Zone. Again, I think my daughter didn't have a lunch all senior year because she had to get from here to
Right.
the tech school for her biotech.
Right. And so that's one thing that we are seeking to do
Right.
with the schedule that I'm writing now
Yeah.
is to try and alleviate as much of that pressure as we can.
What's the number of students that affects? Is that a handful?
A handful.
Yeah. That are at that level of.
A handful because of Viking Zone.
Oh, okay.
I would say.
Okay.
my impression is that there are some students who wound up in the wrong lunch this year for whatever reason. And because of that, they are not getting a lunch, right, or having to leave a class early.
Okay.
I don't want that for them, so
No, if you can
that's a
head it off
larger
proactively,
problem.
sure.
That's probably what, in the, maybe the 20s of students that's happening to, teens and 20s of students? Okay.
Yeah, I had heard about that, but I know that it worked out. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
it was rocky, but it worked out. So strengths. You can see some representative quotes here, right? Students met with teachers, they caught up on work, they studied for tests. There was a lot said about improved sleep and well-being. I like the second quote under representative quotes where it says, I felt my cognitive functions were at work all day, not just half the day. You know, there's something to be said, and it gets mentioned later. There is a soft start here, right? There is something to be said for having the grace and flexibility in the morning to wake up, get breakfast, maybe talk to your friend, maybe go see your teacher, get your work done, and then start your day. To me, that's worth the 3 minutes that you lose from the class period. It goes from 49 to 46 minutes to make this happen. College and life prep. Using my time wisely. And then social and emotional benefits. So that here ends the student results. These are the staff results. You can see the breakdown of staff that we did survey all of our staff. I'm including, just for time management here tonight, I'm including the 80.8% of them that were professionally certificated staff. I have the data for the other staff. And I would say that probably if you asked me what the outlier was, it's instructional support staff in terms of their feedback on Viking Zone was sort of all over the place. I think we could do a better job as we pursue this next year of being clear about what the expectation for our instructional support staff is during this time. So I think that's my takeaway from that part of the survey. It's not here. I can provide it for you.
That would be, that's professional education. That's management on the part of administration to
Yes.
make sure that, okay,
Yeah,
understood.
that's an administrative. We want to sit with them and talk about what they can be doing during Viking Zone time.
Sure.
Mhm. So we asked our professional staff how often they hosted students during Viking Zone. You can see that breakdown. That was rarely. 1 is rarely. 4 is very often. And then we asked them how often they wait, go back. Was that invited?
One of them was.
Was it a duplicate? Flip it. This is how often did you host students? Flip it again. How often did you invite students, right? So we wanted the answer to both of those questions. How often did students come and how often did you ask them to come are sort of two different things. And so part of what we talked about here this afternoon in our department coordinator meeting was how do we document the work that we're doing in the morning without overburdening the students, right? Because I do want to be able to say to our faculty members when the student isn't successful in the class, are you meeting during Viking Zone? Do you have documentation that you're meeting during Viking Zone, right? Are we using this time for what it's for? That's a staff accountability issue that's important to me. And so that's another thing that we learned sort of from this data and from the conversations during Viking Zone is how can we hold ourselves accountable to using the time wisely, but at the same time provide the students with the freedom to make choices? It's a good question. We're going to introduce some sort of documentation to Viking Zone.
When you say documentation, Dr. Fuller, do you mean, what can you?
I mean
can
a
you elaborate?
log of who, I don't necessarily
Of the why?
care that the student who loves the music teacher is in the room because they love music and they love the teacher, right?
Right.
I'm talking about the students who are visiting teachers for help,
Right.
Specifically for support. I think if we can document those cases, then we will better know if it's working.
Sure. I agree with that part. I
Right.
guess my concern in looking at those two slides ahead of time, and I sort of was smiling because there are some teachers that students just want to be around.
Right.
And so they'll just go and visit them rather than sit out here or in the library or something like
Right.
that. And there's value to that.
Yes.
My concern about the taking advantage of the support piece of it is that I would be concerned that it would become punitive in some instances, and I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts about that.
So,
Like, if you don't do this, you have to, you owe me time, type of
no,
thing.
no.
Understood.
We've
but
been
the
very
potential-
clear
Okay.
That's not what this time is for.
Gotcha.
Right, and
Yep.
and I'll say that here into the microphone.
Okay. Thank you.
Right, that's very.
And I'm asking kind of like as a retort, like
Right.
you know,
No,
I'm putting it
I-
out there because the thought could be,
Right, that you owe me this time one way or the other, and I'm going to get it.
yep.
We're not going to do that.
Okay.
If that's in.
I appreciate you acknowledging that. Thank you. Perfect.
The students, to be fair, the students can also log why they're there, right? So
Yeah.
if there's like a QR code and they check in into their teacher's classroom, for example, I'm here because I wanted help with math, but I'm here because my friends and I were going to work on a math project,
Sure.
just in the math
We need
teacher's room.
extra time. We need
Correct.
a
So
second
they
set
can
of
log
eyes
that as they
collaboratively.
check in. The teacher doesn't necessarily have to keep track of that. It
Sure.
can be done automatically, so that's part of the
I think
conversation.
I think the ability to have that data readily produced is very valuable.
For
Like that's
parents.
everyone.
Yeah.
It's remarkable. Yeah, that you
I-
can just say why and the reason.
To be able to say, it's not punitive to say to a parent, who's concerned about a grade, I invited your student to Viking Zone for 2 weeks in a row and they didn't come, right? That's not punitive. That's information.
right.
Yeah, I know it's not. Okay. In general, my students took advantage of the support available in my space. You see that? So we had an other on this. We introduced an opportunity for people to tell us why Viking Zone was valuable to them. We also included a Viking Zone is not valuable choice, and you can see that 2 people selected Viking Zone is not valuable among our staff on this anonymous survey. But you can see, students getting help, students making up work, students having the soft start, building relationships, right? And then it goes on and on from there. And then some people have proposed, again, I don't want to put to constrict Viking Zone is not my goal, right? To make people do things during Viking Zone is not my goal. But these are some proposals that people have had. You can see a lot of our staff, and I'm sorry that it sort of runs out of space. That's not something I can fix in Google Docs, but a lot of our staff did say that we should be careful about introducing too much prescription into this time. It could make it exactly what we don't want it to be. But we have talked about maybe doing things like teacher PLCs, maybe making some days Viking Zone free or putting Viking Zone in the middle of the day if we want to have an assembly, for example. We could say to our students, that's what happens at my own children's school. On days when there's an assembly, Viking Zone goes away, the assembly happens in the middle of the day. And the classes stay the same size. So you can see mandatory Viking Zone to accomplish tasks for classes, right? College and career readiness check-ins, those kinds of things. Teacher PLCs could happen during Viking Zone. We've been asked by the district to think of how we can introduce PLC time into the day at the high school. Our teachers don't have time to meet in Java-like groups during the day because of the nature of the high school schedule. And so Viking Zone could be a good opportunity for that if we say English is not available on Monday because they're meeting in PLCs. Math is not available on Tuesday because they're meeting in PLCs. Science on Wednesday, social studies on Thursday, and specials on Friday, right? We could get our teachers' time, professional time also, using that block. We asked them how student behavior was. I believe number 1 read the worst, just the worst. And number 5 read like fantastic and wonderful. So you can see, relative to the code of conduct, how was the behavior. These are our teachers talking. I will say not one vape detector went off for 16 days during the Viking Zone. And there were no office referrals from Viking Zone. So I know there's a concern about student accountability and what will they do. It turns out they are pretty good kids and don't do anything. They don't do anything wrong. So we had 27 certificated staff choose not to give us open-ended responses, about the same number set of challenges that they had. About the same number said things like, I didn't have any challenges, NA, Viking Zone's great, we love it. 10 to 15 gave like sort of qualified positive things, like you see there, and then the rest of them sort of gave us those answers about challenges that they faced during Viking Zone. Their lost time in the morning for preparation and setup being one of them. Like, I set up the gym, I set up my lab, I'd make my copies, those kinds of things. Personal logistical strain, like we have some teachers here, and it's something that we are allowed to do by contract, who maybe need to come at, the teacher due day starts at 7:30. Some teachers have arrangements to come at 7:40 and stay 10 minutes later, right? Those teachers felt some strain during Viking Zone because their kids were wondering where they were. Motivation and accountability among students, especially seniors. It is true when you look at the data from the scanning in, the seniors were the least attentive at Viking Zone. They used the time to sleep in, to go to Dunkin' Donuts, to do those things. I've heard a lot of our faculty say, I think it would be different if we had it from the beginning of the year. If we could set it as an expectation in September, then I don't think it would be like this in April for the senior class. And then, of course, other teachers holding students past the Viking Zone time. Right? Like, I'm keeping my student 5 minutes into first period because I'm working with them in Viking Zone. Successes, it's 101 responses out of 18,
Dr.
15.
Fuller,
Yeah.
real quick on the other one. So that prep time in the morning is very valuable, right? Like,
Yep.
teachers also need
Sure.
sometimes a grace period, a soft start from their arrival as well.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel as though some sort of a rotating schedule or calendar to allow for that PLC time would help alleviate some of that?
So the
In other
PLC
words, not
time,
every teacher is available every single day.
the PLC time would mean working together.
Understood.
I think if you talk to most administrators out there, they will say they struggle with the beginning of the duty day, because the way that we tend to interpret the beginning of the duty day is like ready to work. And so sometimes there's some flexibility there, right? That teachers have become used to, right? So we can talk about it. We talked about it a little bit today. My departmental leadership loves Viking Zone and is ready for it to start at 7:30. So I'd like to get us there. It could be a culture shift. It could be a culture shift.
Well,
And it could be take care of it, because we also have 20 minutes at the end of the day. So.
Right.
I know.
Well,
I know.
and I think that, it was a 2-week trial with some investigation ahead of time, and I think that moving forward, it's a learning experience as we go as well. So I think as we
And
go, we'll learn.
To your point about the beginning of the year versus just that trial period, you get into a different type of routine if you know that that's
Right.
the way it is, type of thing. So
Right.
that's helpful as well.
So 15 certificated staff chose not to respond when we asked them what the successes were. There was some unspecified praise. You can see what they said. The rest of it is pretty self-explanatory: academic, social, emotional, and then teacher experience.
Can I add one thing to that?
Sure.
One of the more informal feedback that we would hear in the hallways from staff was that my first period class was like ready to go.
Yeah.
That was just something, as we were kind of dabbling and saying, hey, how to work out, what do you think? They were much more awake, ready to engage, instead of using that first period as that transition.
So if I can get quality minutes if I can get quality 46 minutes as opposed to not as high quality 49 minutes, I'll take that every day as a teacher.
Well, and I think the uniqueness, and I always had a homeroom
Mhm.
in high school, so this is sort of that. Yeah.
Sort of.
I got, yes, it is elongated, but in other words, it's not a hard start for first period, so I think that's the benefit of it.
Yeah.
To that point.
I didn't have a homeroom in high school, but I had one in middle school, and I remember being yelled at constantly to get to homeroom, right? And that's not this. Right. True confessions of Dr. Fuller. Parent results. So these are the parents. We asked them about their youngest child's experience because we recognize that parents have more than one child. I'm more interested in the youngest child's experience because they're going to be with us longer. So we had 261 responses, and with that grade breakdown. Was the child clear about how to use Viking Zone? You can flip it.
What's 4? Very clear.
Yes, 4 is very clear. 4 in all of these is strongly agree, and none of them are reverse coded. They are all positive statements. My child regularly used Viking Zone for academic support or to seek out specific teachers. You can see it's more gradual and less pronounced among the parents. You can flip it. Used it to complete homework, independent work, or incomplete and missing assignments. Help the child stay more organized. They sort of all follow the same pattern with sort of a little bit more disagree than we've seen in the other graphs, but still sort of those cell phone bars. Reduced academic stress. Supported emotional well-being. And then, did the child make independent choices about how to use Viking Zone? That was important to me, right? Are you telling the child how to use Viking Zone, or are they making independent choices? Turns out they're making independent choices according to their parents. And then I wanted to make sure that the parents were clear about what Viking Zone was. And so we asked if there was enough communication. And did it meet the child's needs? And would you support, these are the things that I was talking about before, like if we brought in guest speakers, if we brought in college visits, if we brought in clubs, if the National Honor Society wanted to have a meeting, would you support that? These are the parents' answers. Areas of concern: lost instructional time, right? Reduction of instructional time, 49 to 46 minutes. Someone couched it as 25 hours over the course of the school year. I wouldn't necessarily, that's not the sum of the parts, but okay. The lack of structure or clear expectations. So, if the students were unsure about how to use the time, there was some accountability questions. The transportation mismatch had to do with, we knew that we would get this concern. We were told by other schools who do this that students who are driven to school, students who are driven to school sometimes don't get the full benefit, or drive themselves to school sometimes don't get the full benefit because they don't take the bus and they don't arrive during the beginning of Viking Zone, and that this is called not equitable. I would say that that's not my main purpose for Viking Zone. The main purpose for Viking Zone is to provide academic support, and I'm told from our superintendent, and believe her, that every student in the district has a bus stop, which means that every student in the district can get here at the beginning of Viking Zone. So socialization is a concern. The biomed shows up again, and then high achieving students with fewer needs may have seen less value. Although we did hear from some of our teachers that they saw that teach higher level classes that they wish they had Viking Zone now, because we just came out of AP testing. And so we did have some AP teachers approach us and say it would have been really nice to have Viking Zone for AP review. So, and then strengths. And again, these were very unbalanced, way more strengths than than concerns, but they're both presented here. I just don't want you to get the sense that they are of equal weight. And you can see what they are, some of the things that I've said. And with the addition of it that it's critical for students with after-school commitments, I think the parents are really the only ones where that showed up in a significant way. But it's true that if I have to leave early because I have a game, I can come in during Viking Zone the next morning. That's what I have. I would only say after the presentation of this data that it's clear that our path forward includes Viking Zone. And so my recommendation to Dr. Russell, and I hope that her recommendation to you, is that that we pursue Viking Zone next year in a meaningful way. So,
Does anyone of the board have any comments or questions or concerns? I know that Mr. Liggett already voiced
Yeah, I was
his
going to say, I
praise
think
for
I've done that.
On the record.
And on the record, yes. And I have not changed my mind, even though I saw so many of those negative comments that you presented. I'm still in favor of this.
There was a lot of math done to figure out the amount of time lost. Dr. Sadler, Mr. McKinney, do you have any issue bringing this to the board for recommendation based on Dr. Fuller's presentation? Thank you, by the way,
No,
because this was really above and beyond in terms of transparency and data collection. This is something that can actually be pointed to and referenced on the record for everybody to see, and it was really wonderfully presented and done. So thank you for listening to the feedback for those that were concerned and addressing it with data. That's really, really helpful.
you asked me to tell you how it went. So
Well,
there you go.
I mean, just saying good would have been probably,
It went
I mean,
great.
yeah, thank you.
There were definitely, I saw more positives than I saw negatives in the data. And I think a lot of districts have something like this in their schedules. So I think us moving in this direction is much needed and a positive way to go. And I just thank you, Dr. Fuller, for your forward thinking and just really coming in and trying to find things that are going to work best for our students. I'm truly impressed with you as the new leader of our high school. I must say, I'm extremely impressed with you. And I just thank you for being so forward thinking and really thinking outside of the box thinking outside of the box and how to really remove barriers for students and provide our students in our high school the opportunity to really thrive like they should. So I really, really am impressed with what you've done thus far, and just kudos to you and your team.
Thank you. We are trying to bring that to the building, and there's a lot of work left to be done, and it will get harder from here. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
So, yeah, I agree completely. So you're good with bringing it to June?
Yes.
June?
Yeah, absolutely. We saw Viking Zone in action the one day when we were here for a walkthrough. It looked like the students were receiving it very well. I'm thrilled to hear the feedback from all of the stakeholder groups. There are some things that could be addressed, but I think all of those are eminently addressable, and I really am very excited about it. It's great.
And I think the constructive feedback was really great info gathering in terms of how to make it better, to be honest with you. I think that was critical, and that was the reason for the pilot, in my view, was to figure out, well, what do we need to think about that we're not thinking about? And those are really tangible, real items. So I really appreciate. And honestly, the different pathways and removing barriers, both of you, the work with the career, but I'm not going to say the wrong thing, the education at work, and then something like this, it just really gives students autonomy and grace, and I really appreciate that. On the heels of that, I have a question for you with regard to some of your other program planning. I know it wasn't part of your, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Youth aid panel will be right there, right there. Some of your other program planning revisions. I'm wondering if you have any just anecdotal feedback about that. I know that there was a day set aside for the swim test, and I have seen some questions, concerns on social media, for example, in some of the parent groups that one day was not enough, that other additional days would be planned. I was referred back to administration to ask that, so here I am and asking, just for the community's purpose, what the plan is for that for the rest of the
So
year.
there are 2
Do it
days
duet.
that we are planning. Yes.
Okay. Have they been communicated
They
out?
have not, but they will in the next day or so.
Because we are running out of time fast. I know the countdown for everybody is on, so.
We are recognizing a need for additional days.
Okay. And I appreciate the work that you've done and also data gathering with regard to requirements and also availability, both for our 8th graders and our current high school kiddos. So I appreciate that. Was there any other anecdotal feedback you've gotten from that, or?
I don't know. How do you think it went?
I was there for 2 of the days when the 9th graders were conducting their tests, and also when the 8th graders came from both West and East. It seemed to go well. Some of the trepidation was the amount of students that were requesting to opt out at the middle school level anyway. And so from the PE teacher's perspective, it was a lot of students. Were we going to be able to cycle them through so they all could demonstrate proficiency? And that part went well. So I would say we did get them, all students tested. And I want to say we had around 90 students or so test. And we got through that at a fairly a good pace. And the students, I would say, generally for the most part, did very well in it.
Do you have, and you don't have to, I mean, I don't want to make you speak off the top of your head, but perhaps in June we can take a look at some, especially after the additional days are offered,
Yes.
some data as to how many tested, how many were successful, and then what the other pathway will be for them to have a replacement unit in lieu of that. So
Absolutely.
I would look at the whole opportunity associated with opening and broadening the PE offerings to not have to do swimming. But it seems as though there was some, like you said, trepidation around some of that. So I'm just wondering what can be done, how can it be coached, and how can we figure out beneficial use of time and kind of bring it up to the present.
Yep, we're exploring a lot of different avenues right now, so yes, we'd be happy to
I
talk
would
about
love
that.
to see that in June.
Okay.
Yes, we have some preliminary data.
Yeah, we
from-
actually,
from
yeah, we
the-
do.
I mean,
from the day.
numbers and
We-
yes or no, they passed or failed, or
Yeah,
you know.
I would say we'll have that data, but also like a kind of a plan looking forward.
Yeah.
Let's just say.
Okay. And then I'm sure with schedules coming and things like that, that has to sooner rather than later, I'm assuming.
Correct.
That's
We were already
wonderful.
talking about building out the swimming versus non-swimming sections of
Of course.
PE within the schedule. But we have to know how many first.
I guess that was my thought about, and listen, I understand trying to consolidate, but you also need to take into account student lives and things like that.
Sure.
So, and I know that you know that.
I mean,
So
unless
appreciate
the numbers are on the razor's edge of sectioning, there will be flexibility there for students. who test.
Understood. One or two. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, that was my last thing. I know it wasn't part of that, but I've been
Oh,
wondering. So
I appreciate it. Thank you.
saved this moment for it to be on the record that more dates for swimming opt-out are
There
coming.
will be more dates for swimming
And the communication will happen
soon.
soon. This week?
Yeah,
It's
that's the plan.
over
I've
almost.
been working with high school administration to secure 2 dates, and I think we have those. I just want to double check to make sure that one of them that was in question we're available to do.
Okay.
But yes, we
And
will
so
have 2 dates.
will they both be school day dates? Or will they be an after-school opportunity for our friends at East and West?
Yeah, so the one we were looking at was on June the 11th as a possibility, which
that's
is,
a
I
half
believe, a
day.
half day for the
Yep.
9th grade students. And then we're also looking at the possibility of maybe June 16th for East and West students.
Wonderful. So that pushes us into June. Does that affect scheduling? Or is that still going to be okay?
It's not going to do anything we can't undo.
I love that. It was a great answer. Okay, let's talk about youth aid panel.
So, talking again a little bit about pathways and grace and autonomy, that really is a good segue into youth aid panel because it's exactly what it does. So, if you want to, so I know everyone here has kind of heard a lot about youth aid panel or YAP throughout the year, but I just wanted to go over the purpose again of youth aid panel, and really, it has many really important facets to it, but accountability and relationship building are two of the most important factors for YAP. It promotes personal growth because when the panelists come up with the resolutions, it is very much about growing and learning from your mistakes, but very much individualizing those resolutions so that they meet students' interests, they meet the students' needs, and they really take into account what happened, why it happened, and how can that student learn and change under the support of their mentor. Again, it develops a broader sense of community. Students really have to think about who they have harmed, including themselves, and write impact statements or apology letters. They don't need to give those out to the people they've written them to, but they do need to reflect and talk that through with their mentor. And again, it is really about helping students remain in their learning environments and avoiding them entering into the juvenile justice system. So very quickly, I wanted to talk about a timeline because a teacher and I talked about this today, and we kind of said, yay us, like we're proud of where we've landed. Last summer and early fall, Dr. Russell was in communication with Angela Bell, who's the assistant district attorney. From there, it went to Dr. Fuller, came to the rest of the administrative team. The 5 of us went to meet with Angela Bell on one of the in-service days early in the fall. We absolutely loved the program and really sat down and talked as a team how we could bring this to fruition. Dr. Fuller put out an interest, we talked about it with staff, we put out an interest survey, and we had 19 people who were interested. From there, we jumped into the training with Angela on a Saturday in November. After that, from December to January, I had the good fortune of working with the coordinator at North Penn, who also happens to be a dad here in the district. And so we were able to really collaborate. He was able to share with me a lot of their documentation and a lot of their maybe some of their fumbles along the way so we could learn from them, but all the good parts that they've done as well. So that was extremely helpful. We met as an internal YAP team and really practiced and role played and talked about things and really figured out how we were going to do all of this. And then on January 27th, we launched it. It was the first day of the second semester, and we launched it. And I will share some data with you on the next slide about YAP for this year. In April, we shared it, talked to the whole staff. The other day, on the in-service day, the panelists role-played what a hearing looked like for all the staff, and they were really able to see what YAP looked like. And I've gotten so much interesting feedback from people, it just, passing by in the hallway, in the office. I didn't know that's what it looked like. This is even better than what I thought it was. How do I join? So it was a great opportunity for us to be able to present on Tuesday to the staff. And then this summer, we're going to be doing some additional planning and learning together as a summer PD opportunity. So this is our data. We've had 16 referrals, which is of 15 students. Of those, we've had 14 hearings, which means 14 students have moved into the youth aid panel hearing process. Of those 14 hearings, that is 13 students, and 12 of the 14 hearings, parents participated. We have been able to save 80 days of suspension, both combined in school and out of school. So that means of those 13 students, 80 days they were able to be in the classroom learning while still being held accountable for their actions, as well as really being reflective and working with their mentors through that process. We were able to save about $3,300 in fines between the THC vaping and the nicotine vapes, which come along with fines. We've had 5 referrals for THC vapes, 6 referrals for nicotine vapes. There was 1 referral for a racial slur, 1 referral for theft, and 1 referral for under the influence of alcohol during the school day. All the panelists have participated in at least 1 YAP hearing, and 15 panelists have served as a mentor. So that is just our data for now. We're really proud of where we've landed. We know we have work to do to keep growing. We want to expand our community service opportunities and try to find some more local places that can be approved through the ADA's office. We're hoping to host some kind of a luncheon or information session for some of our local community members, whether that is in the summer or very early in the fall. But what I am most proud of sitting through all of the hearings, because I participate in all of them as a support system for both parents, students, and panelists, is the honesty that our students show, the reflection that they have, the willingness to grow and learn and to make changes, the willingness of them to say, I made a mistake and I get now how it's harming people. Our parents for just really sitting through some hard conversations, and then our panelists for volunteering their time as well as creating these resolutions for students that are meaningful, and the mentors are so invested in the kids and they want to see them do well, and they remain connected through them to them even when they are done with their resolution and they've exited from the program. So my presentation was really short. I just wanted to provide everyone with an update because it is a really good thing happening in our school district, and I am just grateful that we were able to move forward with it.
Fantastic. Thank you very, very much for the update. And I kept thinking as you were talking about the relationship building that was happening, not just with the families, honestly, the parents and the kids, like you said, the hard conversations, but also with the mentors and the students as well. I think that relationships are formed in a strong way, behaviors improve, right? I think that's something that educators in general have known for a very long time. The question that I have, the vapes, the theft, and the alcohol, those are pretty self-explanatory to me as to why they would be referred, a reason for a referral. Can you talk a little bit about what would create a racial slur referral? Because I feel as though racially charged dialogue and bullying is something that is problematic everywhere, just not in our buildings. But I'm curious as to how it would rise to the occasion of the youth aid panel.
So without going into great detail, because the program is extremely confidential, when the house principal looks into the situation and fully investigates, they're learning more about it. So it's listening to what the student who committed the offense is sharing, as well as the victim of it. And in this particular situation, this made the most sense because it is about learning and growing versus punitive. And truthfully, when you think about a student sitting in in-school suspension for a day, 3 days, 5 days, are they learning about what, are they learning how to communicate better with people? Are they learning how their words impact or their behaviors impact others? No, they're like, I'm just going to sit here and do my work, and I hope no one, I'm good. When you have to sit in a panel with 3 teachers in the building, me, your parents, and yourself, and you have to take accountability and ownership for what has happened, that is powerful, and that is authentic. And so, and then the resolution is around learning how your words impact people. So that is in certain situations, it is, again, we have ones that are kind of like automatically we will go to youth aid panel, and then there are some that are discretionary. This was discretionary based on what the house principal learned through the situation, and in this situation it was absolutely the right fit.
Yeah, so I agree with everything you just said, particularly about ISS and OSS. I don't really believe or support either of them. I think that they are ineffective, especially for repeat offenders that maybe have a lack of caring that that's even the penalty. So I guess then my next question would be, why was there only one referral for racial slurs?
Because in the 2 marking periods, that is all that has come down the path for that.
Okay.
I have not been made aware by anybody that is a situation that has occurred that we needed to address through youth aid panel.
So,
So I I apologize, I don't necessarily have that data right in
That
front
was sort of
me.
rhetorical. It wasn't to put you on the
But-
spot,
but it
I
would
think
be,
I think to me it should be kind of a zero tolerance sort of thing. Obviously, the other things are self-explanatory. They're illegal, right, for school grounds. But I do think that the restorative nature, to get to the core of what is happening and the experiences that, the discriminatory experiences that some of our students are living every day, I feel as though if that would be an avenue, although this is we talked about this being an extreme avenue, there needs to be a similar mechanism, maybe not youth aid panel, but a similar mechanism to have that type of really
The
upfront.
good news is with
We're bridging
restorative
that gap.
practices coming down the path
Yeah.
very soon, those opportunities, that is really, and if you recall the presentation for the grant, what restorative practices allows is for large group circles in the classroom, but it also allows for those smaller circles amongst peers to repair harm.
Okay.
And really allow for those students to have those conversations. It has to be agreed upon by both the victim and the person who committed the offense. And sometimes they're not, one side or the other is not willing to do it or in a place yet to do it. So sometimes that is a barrier, and it is a genuine
And
barrier.
that may be when this is appropriate. You
Right.
know, if perhaps the victim is not comfortable,
You can actually have both. I mean,
Right.
there is no reason that you couldn't have a student who goes through youth aid panel and is also participating in a restorative conversation with the victim.
Understood.
That is, they're not mutually exclusive.
Right. I guess to me, this type of restoration of behavior will be what changes culture. And I think that in instances of this, there should be dozens based on anecdotal conversations. I don't know if anybody has anything to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, so things that here's sort of what I believe about this. I think a restorative culture, right? If we can get the restorative practices into the classroom, I think it proactively addresses a lot of this stuff. Discriminatory language, right? Yes, and so I think that's sort of step one is trying to build a culture where that's the norm. When we have breaches of that, I think that this is what changes relationships. Change behavior, right? That's what changes behavior. Your relationships with other people, whether that's your parents, your trusted teachers, Mrs. Franciosa, Dr. Fuller, or the victim, right, will change your behavior. I sometimes worry about, like I've been told before by families and by students, it's not my job to educate you, right? Like, you hurt me. It's not my job to educate you about how you hurt me. I'll leave that to someone else, which I respect, right? But it needs to be done relationally with somebody. So I think that's the value in this kind of program in restorative practices. I'll also say that I would encourage here for whoever's watching this, like, we want to know about these things. I think a lot of times these things happen and nobody reports them, nobody says anything, nobody runs it by anybody, and we want to be able to engage these kinds of processes with people. So I would like to be an ally in that kind of work. So just
I appreciate you saying that on the record. I again, anecdotally and through years of conversations and seeing that as one of the reasons for a referral, I think is great. I think it was probably very helpful, and I think that it made the difference of one. But at the same time, I think that by and large, if there was a poll taken, lack of accountability would probably be on top of mind for most folks that have been impacted. So I guess that's where I would ask that if this one referral can serve as kind of a stepping point for better conversations in terms of accountability and other maybe more minor passing instances, I think that would be very, very helpful to the culture of the building. Not just this building. Yeah.
No, agreed. And I think when we start moving through the restorative practices, and it really becomes, and I'm not saying like next year it's going to be this magic, but as the culture grows and as that just becomes part of the language and the way of being in the school district, those kind of conversations happen authentically in classrooms. They happen authentically, and it also gives students the language they need to be able to say things, and it actually gives them the safe space, because what you're doing in the classroom through restorative practices is building community and building relationships with kids who may not have actually had them before, because you go to class, you sit down, you do your work, you may not be working in groups, so you may not know the other students, you may not know how they feel about something. And so by having those circles, whether they're the big ones, the small ones, the smaller conversations, the conversations where we're repairing harm, that's where students really learn and grow. And not only do they learn and grow in that minute, but they walk away with knowledge of how to have those difficult conversations and really advocate for themselves or for others, even if it's not a friend, but they're able to stand up and say, whoa, that's not what we do here. That's not who we are. And so is there going to be a magic wand that gets waved next year and we bring this in and everything happens? No, but it does chip away at things little by little. But I also agree with you that as these things come up, we do need to think about what is the best course. Is it a restorative conversation? Is it going through youth aid panel? Is it a combination of both? And I do think, like Dr. Fuller said, these programs and kind of the way we're thinking about all of this, we do want to be allies in this. We do want to support students, but we also want students to learn and understand the perspective and grow in their empathy.
Huge benefit. I think this is a really, really excellent conversation, and I think part of that accountability is through obviously professional development and providing staff the tools to facilitate these types of conversations and having a comfort level of doing so, because the conversations piece of it doesn't come second nature. First nature to everybody. It's not always the best, most comfortable thing to have hard conversations. But treating people a certain way and how we present ourselves in the building is how we present ourselves to the community. And I think that is just, it's remarkable work. Do you have anything to add? Anyone else?
Okay. All right, we'll move on to, sorry. Okay. Okay. We'll move on to our update for full day kindergarten. It's our honor to present the update on behalf of the hardworking teachers, teacher assistants, principals, the early learning coach on making full day kindergarten a success. Full day kindergarten took a lot of work to get ready for. Right away from the beginning of planning, teachers were engaged in the planning process and discussions. We visited, or teachers had the opportunity as well as admin to visit other districts who are already operating full day kindergarten to, visit classrooms, have discussions with the teachers. From that, we recommended an instructional coach for early learning because other districts were implementing that and we saw that success. So we hired a coach this year to support full day kindergarten implementation as well as early learning in literacy and math K-2. This is what a student day looks like. Moving from half day to full day, we were able to add science as well as additional instructional minutes in all of the other subjects. And rather than us talk more and more, we thought that it would be best for students and staff to share their experiences. We want to give credit to Todd Moore of for the video and his video production students at the high school for shooting footage and editing video, and then also special thanks to the staff and students who are interviewed here in this video.
Kai, Gwen, Kira, Wiley, Zoe. My favorite thing to learn about kindergarten is I love to play with my friends. Playtime and math time. Youth, Flags, math, this new school. I like going to art and doing new things.
Full day kindergarten, it's really amazing. Every time I visit the classrooms, I'm able to see that the kids are using more exploration in their learning. They're using manipulatives, they're moving around. It's really exciting to see.
This year with the full day kindergarten program, we're really able to get to know the students on a more personal level, get to spend more time with them, knowing their interests, getting to know what they like and dislike, and just really able to create a connection with them.
I think something my students have taught me is that sometimes we don't give them enough credit for what they can do. When they come into kindergarten, they're 5 years old, and sometimes we think 5-year-olds can't do that when they actually can.
I would say the biggest change is definitely what these kiddos are able to do academically. We've seen so much progress with them from the start of the year till now. We've seen it reflected in their data, all their progress that they've made. And I really think too, just their independence in full day K, being able to do things on their own and feeling that success. And also full day K has given them so much more time to interact with one another, socialize with one another, and really build that sense of community in our classroom this year.
Students taught me so many things. The first thing they taught me by far was patience, because when they're little learners coming in, they have to learn how to do everything at school, from tying their shoe and putting their book bag out. So I learned how to be patient, but then they taught me resilience, because these kids can get through anything. They grow so fast. They taught me that you should set your expectations super high, because they're gonna reach the bar wherever you set it.
I think the most surprising thing for me is how much academically, in the area of reading, math, and even socially and emotionally, how far they come in such a short amount of time, having that full day program. I think the kids have taught me the most that they might be little people, but they can definitely do big things.
When I saw the children working in their morning centers, which are also called Soft Start, when they would just be in all their little groups, coming in, unpacking so independently, and just working together, solving problems if they didn't get a turn. That's a huge deal, and we definitely have time for that now. But just watching, just sitting back and observing and learning so much more about the kids, just watching them play. I mean, we definitely learn a lot of academics, but watching them change and evolve as a family and just really socially and emotionally growing a lot this year, that's been some of my favorite moments.
What has surprised me most about full day kindergarten this year is how the students are able to get through the day. So being half day and now full day, it's just the stamina that they have. So it's pretty cool. It gets them ready for first grade next year. So I love that they will be able to transition right into first grade next year. I feel like take our time in a half-day program. It was so rushed and we were kind of moving really quickly to one thing to the next. The other thing we've really been able to do is like a full morning meeting using the responsive classroom model, so they're able to really build that classroom community in the full day.
You'll post on the, can you post this on the district's website?
Yes.
That would be
Yes, we can.
remarkable. I think it's an excellent, excellent video. It really, I mean, talk about the snapshot for what the day is like. That was really, I think it captured everything, other than specials, but really, really awesome.
Thank you. I would love to take credit for it, but it's really the hardworking teachers and principals. So we're at the time of year now where we are screening our incoming kindergarten students as they register. Our teachers and reading specialists are working to screen our students and get a gauge on their readiness for kindergarten. Moving into the summer, we are piloting a kindergarten camp at Schwenksville Elementary. It will run for 4 days, for 3 hours a day for students. Teachers will report for 4 hours a day to allow for prep and readiness. for our students. During the camp, students will pursue our theme of a road trip where they will visit each teacher's classroom. So all teachers, all of 4 of the Schwenksville kindergarten teachers will put eyes on all of the incoming students who are participating in camp. And they will rotate through each teacher's classroom one of those 4 days on their road trip to visit the zoo, the farm, the beach, and the forest or mountains. During the instruction, teachers will help students with early literacy skills, as well as getting ready for kindergarten, how to unpack, where to get the bus, all of the things that they're going to need to know as they enter kindergarten, and help them feel comfortable as they enter for the first day of school as well.
Can I ask a quick question about
Sure.
the pilot?
Yes.
So I'm assuming that during registration at Schwenksville, the pilot's being communicated to the families.
Correct.
And then do we have a number of kids that are going to participate there? Or?
The last number I heard was probably about a week and a half ago, and it was 50 students were enrolled in camp.
Okay, so it's a little more than 2 classes worth of kiddos?
Our kindergarten numbers this
About 18 or
year will
20?
be, yes, yeah, but it might be a little bit lower than that.
Okay.
But it's nice to have those small class sizes for that first
Broken
camp
up into 4,
experience.
100%. I just was curious as
Yeah.
to how many registered versus how many set up.
We're
for.
still continuing to register students,
Okay.
and the advertisement for the camp is continuing. So
Okay.
we do expect more students to enroll and more students to participate in camp.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Is she listening and she wants to add? Great.
Krista just shared it's 35 students for camp right now.
Oh, 35, sorry.
Okay.
Mistaken, yeah.
No problem, but
Yeah.
we've had more registered for Schwenksville. I mean, obviously, there might be limitations with the date and the time and all of that, so I understand.
Not 35 registered.
I understand, but for the, okay, gotcha, yep. I just wanted to, I was just curious.
I appreciate
what
that
type of
correction.
Yep.
So then orientation is a great time for our students and their families to come, their guardians to come and learn more about kindergarten. We have 2 sessions that we're offering in August where families will learn about the school, the overview of the curriculum. Students will have the opportunity to visit their classrooms and meet their teachers, as well as a bus tour. As families register their children for kindergarten, they will receive newsletters from the district that give tips and tricks to help parents and guardians support their children at home and to help get them ready for kindergarten.
All right. Finally, we are at the Act 48 committee meeting. So this took place on May the 11th, and one of the purposes of this meeting was to bring stakeholders together, which included teachers, administrators. We had 2 board members there actually, and then also some community members and business partners too, to look at our proposed summer learning program and also to just get their input as well, just to make sure we were incorporating everything we needed to incorporate. Act 48 mandates that all educators who are certified in any educational role receives ongoing professional development. So all of us have to receive 180 hours every 5 years. And so the school, for the most part, the district offers professional learning for all employees. So the majority of these Act 48 hours are provided by the district. And we just try to tie in, of course, first of all, our comprehensive plan. There was a professional development component of that where stakeholders met there to discuss priorities of the district. And then we also, again, wanted to incorporate teacher feedback for what they're seeing on the front lines, and then also our community partners as well. So really, professional learning incorporates anything that is going to improve student outcomes. So improving teacher practice and student learning is what this is geared towards. It's more than just teachers getting together and meeting. We talked a little bit about our instructional and professional calendars. As you may notice, there are 10 more teacher days than there are student days. Those 10 extra teacher days are where teachers primarily receive their Act 48 credits. We also have our summer learning as well. So as we'll see in the next slide in just a second, teachers have the opportunity to receive professional learning during the summer. And if they participate in that, then they could flex out of certain days throughout the school year. It's just something we try to do to be flexible to teacher needs. We also have days built in for, say, parent-teacher conferences, in-service days. All the different schools have their initiatives that they're walking their teachers through. So those were those 10 extra days. That's what's incorporated within those 10 extra days.
So we offer teachers the opportunity to have flexible learning for 18 hours during the school year. And this counts for 3 of those additional teacher days compared to student days. We offer workshops in the summer, as Dr. Handahan expressed. So teachers have the opportunity to do some of these 18 hours of flex during the summer. There's also opportunities throughout the school year as well. Opportunities could be in person or virtual, both live and asynchronous opportunities for virtual. The flex hour, teachers also have the opportunity to collaborate in teacher groups, and up to 6 of those, there could be 6 hours of collaboration that could count toward their flex time.
And as you may notice, those collaboration hours have decreased over time. And so now we are on 6 hours. If you're wondering why that is, it is just based upon other district priorities as well. So there's a lot going on within the district, new resources soon to be implemented, that sort of thing. So it's just trying to balance the needs of the district with that important collaboration time of teachers as well. We're also trying to tie in some teacher collaboration because we do realize the importance of it. So utilizing like some of the half days maybe to provide some additional collaboration time, and in the summer offerings as well, just embedding that collaboration time within those professional learning opportunities. These are the things that drive professional learning throughout the district. So first, I mentioned earlier the comprehensive plan. That's really where all this starts. But then we're also looking at data too. We're looking at data from previous professional learning opportunities where a survey goes out and teachers are able to express their needs throughout that, and also the previous experiences, and we try and learn from those previous experiences. We also look at our data. So up there, of course, is like math achievement data, right? So that's something that we would definitely be thinking about when we're designing professional learning opportunities. And then we have state mandated courses too that we have to engage in. Any questions? Any other items of conversation?
Does anything need to come to the board as a whole for June? In terms of initiatives, in terms of asks, in terms of anything?
Not that I can think of at the moment,
Okay.
Other than what was already presented.
Understood.
Yes.
But there were no
Mhm.
asks. They're mostly just updates, which I think is wonderful.
Yes, for today.
For today. So between now and agenda planning, should something arise that needs to be addressed for approval, you'll obviously let Dr. Russell know. Thank you for
Yes.
holding it down tonight.
Yeah,
All of you.
of course.
All of you. Thank you very, very much. Because I know this was a longer one tonight, but it's our last one of the year.
Thank you.
Does anyone have anything else?
I'd just like to add, and I just want to again follow up on Dr. Sadler's comments earlier. I mean, this team has been remarkable this year across the district. So again, the accomplishments that you folks have done, again, go above and beyond. And I am truly appreciative of the work that you do educators and community builders and stakeholders in our community. So thank you, and please let your teams know that I appreciate all that you do and have done. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate you as well.
Really,
Yeah.
really forward-thinking stuff. We really, really appreciate it. Absolutely. Good. Anything else? Last thoughts? Wonderful.
All right, there being no further business, the meeting is adjourned at 9:18 p.m. Thank you.